world where nostalgia rages across the land, where everyone and their mother has a podcast, where there's still a movie trailer guy who says, in a world. Three friends revisit films, shows, and games that molded them as they search for answers to life, the universe, and everything in between. Settle in and join us for Screen Refresh.
Welcome back to Screen Refresh, a show where we revisit the films, shows, and games that molded us as we search for answers to life, the universe, and everything in between. I'm your host, Nick, and I'm joined by my fellow Screen Refresh crew, Dean, David, and Tim.
Nice booby trap.
Quote from the film.
Oh, that's too good. I was gonna go with, you gotta make people laugh, but no, that's way better. That's better than anything I got.
I mean, we could always go with the you remember me, Eddie, when I killed your brother. I do it just like this.
Today we're going back to one of my earliest memories of watching movies, and it's going to be 1988's Who Framed Roger Rabbit.
I was gonna say, it's like one of your earliest memories. It's like this was it.
Yeah, there's not many like toddler era things that I remember. I remember holding the case for this, looking at the pictures for the back of the VHS, and I was way too young to be watching this.
Same.
Yeah, more than certainly.
Yeah, this is not a kids movie, despite the all-star cast of. I think this is the heaviest loaded cast of any movie we've ever discussed or seen.
I think it's one of those kids movies that, I mean, there's too much silliness in it it's like, yeah, it's for kids, but it just has the bite of all these other kids movies.
Yeah, like I feel like
era.
the adult, like made for adult equivalent is Cool World with Brad Pitt and I think Kim Basinger.
Except that one's bad.
Well, but like this one, I feel like there's still enough comedy that kids can still watch this. There's still stuff that is on the edgier side for them to be watching. But I mean, that was kind of kids movies when we were growing up unless it was just like the rated G Disney, we had some stuff that covered darker things. This is a solid kind of like a film noir crime film, just wrapped around a really candy coated shell.
Well, I mean, it's basically Chinatown, right? Like,
yeah,
just replace Chinatown with the cartoon characters.
Also, I feel like it's rough as this is one of your earliest childhood movie memories. Because to me, I feel like this is one of the greatest film achievements that they've done. So to watch this early on and then have every movie after that be like, well, it's not Who Framed Roger Rabbit.
Tim, I wasn't like a ravished movie critic at the age of 3. I just took everything at face value, so...
Bullshit.
Drew, you said you didn't know movies could be bad until 2008 when The Strangers came out.
Yes. No. It was not The Strangers.
That's a bar.
It was The Village.
Bad Bar, the movie.
I mean, also not very good, but yeah.
Yeah. That was the
movie?
First one where it
Bad
rocked
Bar?
my world.
So do you all remember seeing this?
Yeah, and I gotta say, I don't think I understood most of this movie when I first saw it.
I felt the same way, because when I had to do the notes for this, I actually just finished doing the notes again, because I realized how much exposition they dumped that it never really clicked on. Like, I got the story, but I didn't really get what they were saying.
Mm-hmm.
And as the adult watching it now, like, oh, wait a minute, oh, okay, this is what it's actually happening, because it's the little like behind the scenes and the real motives behind just, bad guy bad, good guy good, good guy stops bad guy kind of thing to it.
Yeah, I almost have trouble now watching this again, calling it like a kid's film, because outside of like some of the zany hijinks, like there's nothing there for kids.
No, I think it's something that they could watch, but it's not aimed at them.
Yeah.
Like, I think there's
I feel like
traumatizing stuff in this for them if they decide to watch it. And there's a lot of confusing, like, real estate-based crime drama.
I feel like it's almost like a reverse of what we see with kids' movies, where it's like it's a kids movie adults can like. I feel like this is an adult movie kids can watch.
Yeah.
Actually, yeah.
Because I mean, the blackmail, the sexual content, the euphemisms that weren't euphemisms.
Yeah, the murder, alcoholism.
Yeah,
like
all that flew over my head.
I don't remember as a kid. Like, I remember playing patty cake like in the movie, and I'm like, I don't know what I thought that was. If I thought it was, if I knew it was something supposed to be adult, but I probably just was confused as what it really was supposed to be. I
like how I made myself laugh in my notes because in that scene where they're playing patty cake, all right, Acme and Jessica Rabbit play patty cake. This is not a euphemism. They are actually playing patty cake. But
Roger is just as upset about them playing patty cake,
and the scene
as if they
plays
were doing
out
the euphemism.
Yeah, and the scene plays out as if they were doing that euphemism. So it's insane on how it blends that reality to the whimsical at the same exact time so well.
Well, also it's a funny scene because he just hears them talking, and she's like, "Okay, fine, but take off the joy buzzer," and then they start playing patty cake.
Yeah.
Now, did you guys were you familiar with the PC game Hair Raising Havoc that came out in like early 90s?
Never even heard of it.
A lot of the movies like this, The Rocketeer, Ghostbusters, I remember playing a bunch of those, like Gremlins, of all the PC games. And this one was it was just kind of like a point and click adventure of trying to figure out, you play in the actual cartoons that take place within this. So like the opening one of Baby Herman and in the kitchen with like all the knives and the oven and the soap and all of that. That's what you're playing through from there. But I remember it being so difficult that I played for months and never got past just that first level, that I thought to this day that is the game. It's just that sequence and nothing else.
I know they made a Nintendo game, but that one it's almost kind of like Dick Tracy in the way that you played just,
like a platformer.
Yeah, and it was very kind of almost like it's that like Monkey Island kind of point and click, almost kind of, but not quite. And it was more actiony and less like that. I never even heard of this.
Oh yeah, it's a blast. I have also there was a whole comic series and graphic novels for follow-ups that I have some of them that it's on my list. I just haven't gotten around to reading them. But until taking a look for this movie, I didn't realize the writer Gary K. Wilf did so many Roger Rabbit universe like novels over the years.
Yeah, and it's very loosely even based because I heard I didn't do it part of the research of this. This is just from prior knowledge and watching other YouTubers talk about it. But Roger dies in the book. Like it's not Who Framed Roger Rabbit. I think it's like Who Censored Roger Rabbit and like who killed him.
And he gets shot really early on.
Yeah, and the whole thing is in the book, it's the Toons are able to like generate a duplicate of themselves for the purposes of like stunts. But he's able to get one that lasts like 2 days to set up an alibi for himself. But then when he dies, the duplicate is helping Eddie figure out the murder before he disappears. So it's like, it's kind of pretty cool. But yeah, it's much different. And the book itself seemed much like darker, but also just more adult in a lot of ways, where it wouldn't be entertaining to kids if they just adapted it 1-to-1. But then I guess later he went on and he did Who Plugged Roger Rabbit, which was not a sequel, not a prequel. It was kind of like another book in the universe where they even mentioned that like Who Censored Roger Rabbit? Oh yeah, like you got that story wrong. That never happened. It was a dream. And then they go into this next one. But yeah, and then he recently did, I think, Who Whacked Roger Rabbit.
Yeah, the most recent one came out in like 2022. Like he's like still actively continuing this universe.
Well, so do you know which one that is? Because this sounds wacky. This is Jessica Rabbit, Serious Business with an X. And it's a origin story of Jessica Rabbit, who was originally a human named Jessica Krupnik before she got turned into a Toon, which presents a lot of things that I just need to read this to find out, like, wait a second. So that means humans, like, this is a body horror thing of humans are turned into toons and then they exist as toons.
I'm waiting for the Mask crossover.
I was going to say, it's like, this is one of those movies that, like, the more I delved into it, the more I was like, oh, I need to read the source material.
Yeah.
Maybe the least horrific body horror you can do. I'm a toon. Oh, no.
That's true. Like, I'm an immortal cartoon now.
True.
How horrible. Unless you're, like, a shoe or something.
This is a body horror of, like, turning into Henry Cavill. That'd be, that would be okay with it.
Yeah.
It's almost like reincarnation. But
Somebody help my chiseled jaw.
So this movie came out in theaters June 22nd, 1988. And during its initial opening weekend, it earned about 11 million across over 1,000 theaters. And then eventually 351 million worldwide, becoming the second highest grossing film of 1988, just behind Rain Man.
The 1-2 punch that cinemas were waiting for.
That's a weird competition.
Definitely some weird competition.
I didn't find anything that released against this that same weekend of June 22nd, which I don't know if that was intentional, of just like, we have like Spielberg involved. It's a Zemeckis film. It's like a mixture of Disney and Warner Brothers. Just don't release movies against it this weekend.
Yeah, it's funny. I didn't put two and two together with Zemeckis and Christopher Lloyd being in this.
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh yeah, it's kind of makes sense on why he would have been picked. So this movie did win 3 Academy Awards for Best Film Editing, Best Sound Effects, and Best Visual Effects. And even the animation director, Richard Williams, got a Special Achievement Academy Award for what he was able to do for the movie. Because this is definitely... we can spend the next 2 hours talking about the accolades of what this movie has done and everything else revolving around it behind, like, trivia and all that, because this movie has huge roots when it comes to just the players involved and how it gotten even made, because of how crazy it is to have Donald Duck and Daffy Duck sharing the same exact screen. And this is the only time in history where that's even happened. Same thing with Mickey Mouse and Bugs Bunny. Never in the history of cinema, television, anything, you were ever able to see those two characters on screen at the same exact time.
That's like getting a DC Marvel crossover.
Yeah,
seriously.
Those happen more often than this.
Yeah, I was going to say, they had like 4 comics.
Yep.
Like, I know we can probably go into an entire side story episode just about the animation work and everything that they did for this. The main thing that I thought was such a cool idea is they figured out the animation approach by deciding, like, Roger will always have a physical interaction to anchor the animation. So it's like he's always picking up or touching something or sitting in a physical seat, or he's like doing something that then they can make sure, like, okay, cool, we can follow what we have filmed and then match the cells to this. So this way we don't have to worry about, like, where is he going to be doing stuff throughout the scene.
I feel that mixed with the way that they did almost an HDR effect on every single cell that was animated.
Yeah. Showing
shadows, highlights, and different lighting conditions. Like, there's one scene where they're in the speakeasy and he knocks the overhead lamp and the light interacts with him the same way that it interacts with everything else. And there's not a second through this whole movie where I don't believe he's real.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, at the time, this was the most expensive movie ever produced. Mm-hmm. I believe it was very shortly after Dethroned, but regardless.
What was that claim?
That it was the most expensive movie produced at the time?
Animated movie.
Oh.
The movie finally started production when its budget was decreased to $30 million. And that was still the most expensive animated at its time.
Gotcha. What's interesting, this movie starts with what seems like it's going to be a pre-cartoon to the movie. I realized watching it on Disney Plus, it's in I don't know if it's in 4K or if it's just HD, but I'm like, damn, I want to watch cartoons in HD. Like,
well,
I know it was put on film, but like,
it's weird.
It looked
though.
like incredible.
depending on who made the movie and how they re-released it currently, watching a lot of the classic Disney movies, and I mean like Snow White, Cinderella, they went back and cleaned up like drawing lines and stuff that made it natural. And it's like going back to like stuff that's made in the 50s through like even current, and then removing film grain that's always been there and making it super clear. That. Yeah, it looks weird.
Oh, actually, I just want to add a clarification. So it was the most expensive movie ever produced at the time. And it held that until 1991 when Terminator 2 came out.
No kidding. I didn't think 30 million would have been that much even back then, but I guess.
And then Roger Rabbit wrote a letter to James Cameron saying, well, I guess it's yours now.
Well, no, so I had it that it was 70 million.
I had it 30.
The budget?
Is it inflation?
I had the budget at 50.6.
Well, it might have started higher, but the production didn't start until the budget was decreased to 30.
Well, I don't know which of those includes a marketing budget.
I have no idea.
I don't know. But yeah, like Dean, the opening cartoon that they do in this, I think also it's because of the way that they use the virtual, like the dynamic camera in a 2D. So it becomes this like 2.5 dimension. It just ends up making it such a cool cartoon of you're doing like these camera shifts where like somebody will look up vertically and all of a sudden the camera will like move upwards and go with their gaze. That just doesn't cross my mind in normal cartoons. That it just seems like it stands out already.
Yeah, they did animate like perspective differently, or not. I don't know if it's how different it was than things at the time, but maybe that was on purpose to like set it up for, yes, this is a 3D world that we're about to go into.
Yeah.
That's a good point, because there's like a side tracking shot at the beginning and Roger's like laying down and like he's perpendicular to the camera, so his feet are close to the camera and you can see the perspective as the camera goes left to right. It's not just his bottom of his feet, but you see the perspective of lines like changing.
I know Disney did this a lot, and they'll actually shoot scenes live action for the animators to go back in and not rotoscope over, but use it heavily for reference. And I wonder if they did the same exact thing for that cartoon and had what's his name, Rob Fleischer, do the actual that's it. Do the actual scene in live action to the best that he could possibly, because obviously he's not going to throw a fridge on his head, or
I mean, maybe
with how dedicated he was.
Hey, the work's
role,
tough, but it pays.
He could have.
It's like, yeah, things were actually filmed. Like they're taking photos to make the animation, and photos are a very high fidelity.
I mean, I think it's the same thing that there's so much animation now that I feel like we've almost gone a step backwards in time since the 80s and 90s in animation of like computer generated. We've had advances, but it's like hand-drawn animation. Now it's like over time, it goes lazier and lazier, or it becomes this like quirky, whimsical thing of, oh, well, this cartoon for kids is like purposely drawn like it's done by a 9-year-old. It's like, but then we had stuff like, I saw Kira in the theaters and it blew my mind on the animation usage that they use in that film and like the hand-drawn cells and everything. That then to watch stuff that comes out now, I think it is becoming a lost art, or it's just becoming an art that is not being produced because it's taking up too much time and too much budget.
Well, I mean, it's got to be a budget thing, right? Because like the flood of 3D animated cartoons.
True. I mean, even
that,
anime
like,
that
my
we
nieces
watch, like all of a sudden now you start seeing like certain sequences of, well, they clearly it's like a battle scene. The entire background is like 3D animated. Sure, it'll get better over time, but I still kind of really miss that golden age of like late 80s, early 90s hand-drawn animation.
They did cut corners a lot back then too, because the amount of times they'll use like a single still frame and pause on it and have like a fake weird background animated to make it look like something's going on. they're able to cut corners enough so that they could put the time and effort into those bigger scenes that require the actual like facial animations and facial movement or whatever else is going on. Because didn't they kind of poke fun at that with Invincible?
Yeah. In the comic, there's that like I think it's like a 6 or 9 panel joke when he's talking to the guy at the comic shop. And he's like, yeah, the animator, or was it like the artists are so lazy nowadays where they'll just have like the same frame just to show like was it a suspense or a pause? And then it's just that for 5 frames. And then all of a sudden the last panel is a guy just being like, so?
I can't say I've done a lot of reading or research on the history of animation, but just to put a cap on it, I think it, for lack of a better term, it's probably like a sweatshop, like these animators work in, like probably really hard and really long hours to do these kinds of animations. And it's probably that, I'm sure that's probably part of it. It's like, yeah, we don't want to do that anymore, and computers can handle it, and we're not killing ourselves to do this.
There was a clip I saw that was talking about a scene from Invader Zim where I forget the whole plot line, whatever, but there's a massive hamster that gets blown up to like Godzilla size, and they told the animators that were it was basically like a sweatshop in Korea that make him look menacing and have like weight to him when he walks forward, but they kind of missed that note, and they fixed that entire scene by just changing the music to the scene to change the way that, you know, like if you change a song in a scene, it'll go from like, oh, heartfelt and loving to like, oh, creepy. And that's basically what they did. They made it sound a lot more funny, all just by changing one little thing. But even then, it's still, I think the biggest problem with the animation is just the constant pressure of just, you need to do 6,000 shots by 5 months from now, and we're going to pay the least amount possible. And we've talked about this before.
Oh, yeah.
It's true. I mean, and now with AI as well. I'm sure everyone has seen the holidays are coming Coca-Cola full AI ad.
Yeah. I adore AI. I am not enjoying AI from a creative aspect. I think it's like any other tool. It's terrific to be able to reduce workloads and things like that when you are still the one controlling the tool and the tool is not acting on its own. So support creators.
It sucks because I don't think people will realize. I think a lot of people won't realize that they're seeing AI.
Yeah.
They might think this looks odd, or maybe some, there's an uncanny valley for some people, especially if there's humans in the shot. But I think they'll just shake it off and they won't think about it again.
Yeah, I mean, the first time I saw the ad, I was like, oh, something seems weird. And then the second time I saw it, I saw the subtext of like, created by Coca-Cola's AI engine. And I was like, oh, wow.
Wow, why does Coca-Cola have an AI engine?
Yeah, it's like somebody didn't get paid for this.
Yeah. So Frank Welker has an uncredited role as Dumbo.
Yeah, we have a massive cast. I can't possibly go into all of them, but at least the main players, we have Charles Fleischer. He plays our hero Roger Rabbit, Benny the Cab, and a couple of the Toon Patrol Weasels. Lou Hirsch is Baby Herman. Let's see, and we also have Kathleen Turner, who I only found out until I think this year is the voice of Jessica Rabbit. I had no idea. She was apparently uncredited, so that would explain quite a bit. But then we also have Bob Hoskins as our main live-action hero, Eddie Valiant, and Christopher Lloyd as the antagonist, Judge Doom. I almost said Doctor.
And Dean, you might know Joanna Cassidy, who played Dolores, as one of the runaways in Blade Runner. The one with like the snake scales and whatnot. Zora.
Oh, was it really?
Yeah.
Huh.
And you might know Marvin Acme, played by Stubby K, if you guys are familiar with the musical Guys and Dolls. He was...
Not familiar at all with it.
He was Nicely in Guys and Dolls. I mean, other stuff too, but anybody out there who's
Guys and Dolls is a pretty big...
It's a classic, yeah.
Yeah, the voice cast is staggering. Mel Blanc does his I don't think he was alive I don't actually know when he died, but when did Mel Blanc pass? Our interns are looking it up.
Go to melblancdeath.com. That's all the answers about Mel
he died
Blanc's
in
death.
1989.
How about that? So this was one of his last roles. So he did Bugs, Daffy, Porky, Tweety, Sylvester, and the thing that I have a hard time with too is I don't know a lot of the classic pre-Looney Tunes voice actors, so like I have no idea. So
I mean, that's a long time ago.
Yeah, I don't know how many might have reprised their roles. The only one that stood out is Betty Boop. Her original actress is playing her, which was cool, but all the rest of the cartoon characters that we see, no idea. Nancy Cartwright apparently did the Toon Shoe who gets dissolved in dip. But
It's horrific.
But a lot of the lines too are like either like one or two lines and that's it. There's not really much else that they'll say. It's like a quick cameo and that's really it.
Christopher Lloyd, they I guess one of the people they were originally looking at was Tim Curry.
Yeah.
But he was deemed too terrifying.
They looked at a lot of alternatives for a lot of roles.
Yeah. He would have been fine in this role, I think. Done a good job.
Sometimes I wonder when they do these casting things and they're like, well, they were going to do so-and-so, but they decided, oh, it would be like too scary, or they decided like, oh, it would be too this. It's like, but would it be, or did it just you changed your mind or wanted somebody else? So it's like, well, here's what we would love to have you, but you would be too good at this.
Like they were too expensive and they said no.
Bob Hoskins was like the seventh choice.
Yeah, they had Bill Murray on there. They had
like half of SNL.
Yeah, they had a bunch of people they were looking at for that.
I think Tim Curry would have been fun.
I think he would have done really well.
Yeah,
I think so too.
But Christopher
Lloyd,
without
if you like in a vacuum, if you hadn't seen Christopher Lloyd's performance, you would be like, oh yeah, Tim Curry all the way. But he did an incredible job with the role, so it's like, yeah. Still,
yes.
Well, I still love it. Like the acting switch flip of Judge Doom, of normal Doom versus Toon Doom, and how Christopher Lloyd just ratchets it up to 11, and like the voice change and everything else that he does in the back end of this movie. That he really does nail this, and I think it's disappointing that so much stuff is just thought of as like, oh, Doc Brown. It's like Christopher Lloyd's a good actor. He's been in a bunch of stuff.
Yeah,
he's a great actor. With Bob Hoskins,
my favorites.
It's funny. I started watching that Apple TV show Silo, and there's so many British actors, but they're essentially in America. I'll just say that, and they all live in the silo together, so they have to have the same accent, but their accents are so weird. I don't know if it's on purpose to like, here's our silo accent, or if they're just really bad British and non-American actors trying to do accents. So I found myself now keying into, I know this guy's British, I'm going to really scrutinize his American accent. And I think Bob Hoskins is really good.
Yeah, and Bob Hoskins, like his British accent is like hard, like it is so like hiding that is like, oh man.
I think I felt it start to almost peep through, but he does a pretty good American. I didn't know he was British for a long time. Like,
growing up, I grew up with him as this and Mario from the Mario Brothers movie, and I really thought this was just his natural voice. And then to find out that he's like, I think he had his British accent in the that movie where Jet Li is like a slave or something.
Oh God, Unleashed.
Yeah, sure. The movie's a fever dream. I barely remember it, and the only thing I remember the most from that was the fact that you have a British accent.
He was British the whole time.
If you've never it's interesting because like you, I grew up knowing Super Mario Brothers, knowing this, and then years later just getting into more film and then finding out he came from doing like these British gangster films where like all of these like crime dramas of like The Long Good Friday and Mona Lisa and all of these things that are absolutely terrific. If you guys haven't seen it, go check it out. But then it's always like, that's who you all of a sudden thought of as, you know who we need for this animated film? This guy, which worked out.
Well, I mean, that's why he was like the 7th choice.
True.
That's what he came from. Was doing those kinds of things right before this.
Well, not right before this. Like, I think he.
Oh.
Actually, no, it might have been because this is what, late 80s. Yeah. So right before this.
Yeah.
Maybe that's why the budget was 70 million at first. And they actually did get Harry Ford to be, that was the first choice, Harrison Ford, but he was over half the budget alone. Like, can we get somebody else, please? Okay, fine. And that's how they knocked the budget down.
I don't know if I'd be able to see Harrison Ford in this role, though.
No.
I don't see him putting up with, like, you mean I have to act against a toon? Like, I don't see that working. Which,
he'll do anything you tell him to,
paycheck.
as long as he gets paid.
I could see him doing this, but it would just be, he would be probably his grumpiest role that he was, and he plays a lot of grumpy roles.
I mean, when he doesn't enjoy his role, he really phones it in.
Which I guess also, like, I know everybody bashed Super Mario Brothers and Bob Hoskins, like, oh, like nobody seemed like they were having fun in Super Mario Brothers. Seeing something like this, he's completely open to doing like silly fantasy stuff. So I really think it really came down to just the directing piece of the set on Super Mario Brothers, and not just, Bob Hoskins. It just like, he doesn't want to do these types of roles.
I mean, I don't think I would blame any actor in the, well, okay, maybe some of the actors in the Mario Brothers movies, but like the writing and direction was terrible. So like anyone under that, I'm just like, you're fine. Like you did what you could.
They got probably into making the movie. They really did, because what they were given as a script on being hired was not what they shot with.
Yeah.
But even Hoskins, like not even 1-2 movies later, he does Smee in Hook.
Yeah. So good. I forgot about that, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then 16 years later, he would do Unleashed.
That wasn't 6 years.
No, 16.
You're my Jet Li.
I think it was 2007.
Yeah. When I was in high school.
That's actually pretty solid.
It was not
2007 Bob Hoskins.
I own you, Jet Li. What? Sorry. You can't go anywhere, Jet Li.
I need to see this movie now. I'm going to be disappointed if it's not him.
Yeah, it's terrible. Don't watch it.
No, I need to see this movie of Dean doing this movie. I need to take Dean into a booth to do that for like an hour, and then train a model on you doing your Bob Hoskins voice specifically from Unleashed.
Man, that we could use it to promote the podcast. Yeah. Let's do it.
Do it, you won't.
You should do the outro for this episode entirely like that.
Do it, you won't.
I'll yell the whole thing.
Just
Roger Rabbit. Oh, I loved the aesthetic that they managed to capture with this movie. Just making like 40s.
Oh yeah.
Los Angeles. I'm thinking that's about the decade they were going for.
When I first
probably based
visited,
around the cars, but
yeah, like when I first visited Los Angeles, I was really hoping in my heart of hearts when you were showing me around town that I would see places that just looked like Who Framed Roger Rabbit.
They do exist, but they're much more contained. Not all over the place.
Yeah, the studio lots, right?
They're much more contained behind gates at Warner Brothers Studios.
So our movie starts, and it starts with a cartoon movie, just like, the vintage style Looney Tunes kind of thing. And as a kid, I always wondered, like, is Roger, not literally, but like, are these cartoons real? And I always thought that, just like, because you see Bugs Bunny, you see Mickey Mouse. I always wondered,
is he a real character?
Yeah, like if this kind of cartoon was like, I think they made one outside of this, and it might have been with the VHS, because I could have sworn there was like
I think there were 3. There was, I think this was the only full one, and then the other 2 were shorter or something like that. But I think they were trying to bring the idea back of doing the pre-movie shorts. And this was going to be like the resurgence to it, which I still love that. I think everything, like, don't give me 35 minutes of trailers. Give me like 2 trailers and then a small short.
Parents were mad when they did that with Frozen, though, because it was the 30 minutes of trailers and then like a 20-minute animated short. So they were there an hour before the movie even started.
My kids got to go to bed.
If I wanted to be here for 5 hours, I'd go see Killers of the Flower Moon.
Yeah, for real. So in the cartoon that starts, baby Herman is in a crib. He's being told by his mother, who's leaving, that Roger is going to be in charge. Camera follows Roger as she leaves, and he's giving reassurance that nothing could possibly go wrong. Baby Herman spots an unattended cookie jar, and then a classic yet dangerous Looney Tunes hijinks. There's a lot of hijinks in this movie.
I think if you had to boil this film down to one term, like one of those thought maps where they just have like the cloud of words, hijinks would be the dead center.
Yeah, I think I say this at least like 6-7 times through my notes, and that's the best way to really put it.
Clippy pops up and it's like, hey, you use hijinks a lot. Do you want a synonym? I'm like, no.
Nope.
Nothing else works there, Clippy.
So these kinds of hijinks, specifically with Baby Herman anyway, would make Tommy Pickles blush because he's doing the same kind of Rugrats style. Oh, I want to go over there and get this. But, you know, all the while Roger's trying to protect him and not let him get hurt because, you know, he's crawling over like a cutting board, crawling over like a stove and lighting the burners as he's walking over it. And Roger's trying to stop, you know, any kind of harm from happening to the baby, but instead he's the one getting attacked and hurt the entire time.
It feels like a classic like WB cartoon, like of the era, or Looney Tune. Like, I was amazed on how like the 1-to-1 for that was so spot on.
And that's what made me wonder, like, if there were more cartoons than just like the 2 that I was able to see, the intro to the movie and then the actual like mini animated thing that was before that, because I really felt like I had seen stuff like this before, but they just nailed the aesthetic that well.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, totally.
I also love how during this, the transition between the cartoon props to the real live action props.
Seamless.
Yeah.
Seamless.
I had to play it back a couple times and I was like, wait a second. That it's like the fridge drops and then the fridge door opens and all of a sudden what's inside? I had to look at it twice and be like, wait a second, that now it's gone from a animated like hunk of chicken to now it's the physical prop version of it, but they just do it so it looks like it's an animated piece. Chef's kiss.
Yeah.
Yeah, so when the director yells cut, we see that there are actually humans in this world, and the humans are living with Toons, and the humans, an angry director in this case, angry that Roger just couldn't nail his mark, because apparently when he bonked his head, it should have been stars, but instead he made floating Tweety birds. And things are quickly shown that these are just not your run-of-the-mill PC-friendly cartoons, because as Baby Herman leaves the set, he walks underneath a woman's skirt, greedily looking up as he walks under her, you know, calls her toots, very misogynistic across the entire, you know, his whole demeanor. All the while, like, Roger's begging the director for another chance because he's, like, apparently this was, like, the 23rd take that he keeps messing up. And here's where we get to meet our live action hero, Eddie Valiant, played by Bob Hoskins. He watches Roger, which is one of the big things that we had mentioned at the start of the show, where they made sure that Roger was always interacting with something in the environment whenever he's on screen. And they cleverly were able to show that Roger is holding on to like the director's jacket, and you know, like something has to be there in order to do it, but it's so seamless you can't even tell. You really believe that Roger is holding on to.
Yeah, because it's easier for my brain to look at that and just come to the conclusion of like, yeah, he's really physically grabbing him, rather than having to figure out in my head of like, wait, but how did they do that scene?
So well done.
And I like also like Eddie Valiant. I wish that we got like a series, like a franchise of 3 Eddie Valiant cases that maybe he works with Roger on this one. Maybe Roger comes back, or maybe it's just Eddie Valiant, a prequel with his brother back when they were working a different case, like all these other
when
things.
They were actually good.
Yeah, because it's like I love how the noir elements in this film and like the crime caper piece, it's not just like a gimmick that's hung on top of like, well, everybody knows we're really here for the animated fun parts. It's done well that even if I were to remove that, it still would end up being a solid noir film.
Yes.
No.
No. It's like, nope, it would have been terrible.
Also, in the RK Maroon room for The Office, he has a Sherman's poster on the wall that looks like Roger Rabbit in like World War II running away from a tank.
So they did originally plan a sequel to take place during World War II.
That would be wild.
They really wanted it, but Spielberg said no, because he was like, after doing Schindler's List, I can't make jokes about Nazis.
Well, they're not World War II, like
that would have been
like Bugs Bunny against the Germans and things. There was like that kind of stuff in those cartoons.
Oh, sure.
Absolutely. That would have been a prequel, though,
At the time.
because this takes place during 1946, if I'm not mistaken, and the war ended in 45.
Oh, so we would need to do a prequel that was Eddie Valiant and his brother, while also cutting over to Roger Rabbit with the troops at D-Day.
We do see that Eddie Valiant is on set, and he shakes his head dismissively at all of the cartoon nonsense, and we see him take a swig of his wild turkey from a whiskey holster tucked away inside his jacket before heading up to see RK Maroon, the owner of the production studio making the cartoon.
I had it in my notes that this is the only time I'll see a movie with Warner Brothers cartoons and Disney cartoons and a main character who is just slinging wild turkey the entire film, like he's Uncle Red from Silver Bullet.
Yeah,
There's a lot of drinking.
A lot of drinking.
That one of the greatest things about this movie is the fact that it shows and it never tells.
Yeah.
They make fun of him for being an alcoholic, but the word alcoholism never comes up throughout the entire thing. It's very in your face, and he's constantly drinking through the entire thing. And even during this exchange with Maroon,
that's a good point.
Maroon is like over budget because of Roger constantly screwing up. So, he hires Valiant in order to tail his wife, Jessica Rabbit. But initially he refuses, and I noticed that he didn't really start to pay attention or even entertain it until he started drinking Maroon's supply of alcohol, whatever it was in the decanter. So it's pretty heavily through this entire movie, and it hit me in a different way later on when he kicks the habit. Like that's when I know he does this, but it just hit me weird.
That's one of my favorite scenes in the film of his interaction. Like, we'll talk about it again later, but like when he pulls out the cartoon bullets and they're like, "Hey, Eddie, where you been?" He's like, "Drunk, feeling frisky tonight, fellas," and they all just hop in the gun, and it's like, "Yeah, let's go."
Yeah.
I also did like that they don't play like his drinking, like they don't play it for laughs.
Yeah.
Like I could see it going in a different direction where like they make a gag out of it, and instead it's just like it's just there, and it's like, yep, all right, he's drinking. Or like in Maroon's office, he's like sees the bottle and he's like licking his lips, like can't get like, but it's not played for laughs. It's just all very subtle.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't you used to be Eddie Valiant?
Did you change your name to Jack Daniels?
Yep.
Totally over a kid's head, but for us it's like, oh man, that's something someone would say about you.
Yep. So well done.
So he takes the case for $50 with 50 on the back end, which comes out to be $810 in modern money.
$100 goes pretty far back then.
Yeah,
so he
so
solves
way
that
more
case in
than
a week. That's a good living.
Yeah, way more than you would expect for like take some photos. Or
yeah.
I think. I don't know.
We're in the wrong
business.
business. If you can make $1,600 just from like, hey, go here, follow this guy and take some photos. Yeah, I'm quitting my job tomorrow.
Yeah, really.
I already do that.
I could get paid for these. Just all of the walls in my house are just
So with the incentive of $100, half now, half when he completes the job, Eddie takes the case. And then when he leaves, it's now the movie kind of showcasing all of the special effects, because we get to see all of the the cartoons interacting with live action at the same exact time. None of it's pertinent to the story, but it's just amazing to see on how well they blended those two together.
Yeah.
Because even the Looney Tunes movies that came out, like the Brendan Fraser one, the Michael Jordan one, they were good, but I didn't have that same sense of belief and realism that Roger Rabbit had.
Like they just kind of immersed you in that universe where it normalized it right from the get-go. Like it didn't feel like I'm supposed to be sitting there saying like, oh wow, that's wacky. It's just, oh, this is just the world that they live in, and it's kind of cool. Between all of I think also really comes down to the physicality of the actors interacting with the things that aren't there, of the guys working on props, and all of a sudden it was like the shoes all fall out and start running away and they're grabbing them. It all makes it look like it has weight to it.
Yep.
Oh yeah, I mean, I did not see the newer whatchamacallit,
Space Jam?
Looney Tunes movie.
Oh.
The newer Space Jam. But like the old one, Michael Jordan, there wasn't a ton of the tunes in the real world. There was like
True.
the sequence when they went to Michael Jordan's house, and like I think maybe one other sequence, but like there wasn't a ton of that.
It was
And,
mostly like the end of this film.
yeah, and like putting the tunes, or putting Michael Jordan in the Toon world is so much easier than what Who Framed Roger Rabbit did.
But they still did a better job when Eddie went to the Toon World versus when Michael was there.
Mm-hmm.
And it sucks on how they canned the Wile E. Coyote movie, because that would have been the third movie to that trilogy of, Space Jam, then Looney Tunes Back in Action, and then the Wile E. Coyote movie, to see how far we would have gotten with today's technology.
Yeah.
But
I mean, they made a Tom and Jerry movie, but I don't think anybody has ever seen it.
I didn't even know they did. Rocky and Bullwinkle is another one that didn't, but that one's panned as it is.
Yeah, that's true. I think there has been some like B movies that have done the like fish out of water, let's put cartoons in the real world. For some reason what comes to mind for me is like the Smurfs. And for a while I thought Sonic the Hedgehog was going to be like that. Except I was like really excitedly mistaken about that.
Also, though, I feel like that's all, since it's CGI, I feel like we're dealing with a different animal there as opposed to like
that's true.
hand-drawn animation interactions.
It did change the way Sonic looked too, but for the better.
You didn't like him with human teeth and those weird eyes?
Ugh.
He craves rings, Nick.
So we see Eddie leave, showcasing the movie's strengths, yada yada. He leaves the cartoon studio by boarding a trolley, and here we see that he's definitely broke because he offers the guy a check, and he's like, "What do I look like, a bank?" And he doesn't allow him on the trolley, and he just hitches a ride on the back of it with a bunch of kids.
Which I like how he like bums cigarettes off the kids, because then all of a sudden it cuts to him getting to the destination, and he has the cigarettes. He's like, "Hey, thanks for the cigarettes, kids," and they're all like, "Oh, have a good day."
Like one actively has it in his mouth too.
Yep.
Bunch of newsies, these kids.
This is a Disney film, kids.
Not wrong.
So he gets back to his place. Mailman's there dropping stuff off, more world building, and guy gives it to him. He's like, "Oh, what do I got? Oh, more bills." And then he just dumps it immediately. He doesn't bother opening it, so we can clearly see that this guy is broke. And what does he do? He runs across the street to the local bar.
So I've never been to like Universal Studios or whatnot. Does the Terminal Station bar exist in any of those things, or like over in Disney and like their version of Toon Town?
No,
It's a
that was
missed
probably
opportunity.
just a set. That was probably just on a soundstage, and the set's completely gone at this
Because
point.
I would love to be able to go to like one of these things and go to the Terminal Station bar from here and just have an area of town that looks like old school Who Framed Roger Rabbit.
If you have
No,
enough money, you could create a pop-up and just remake it yourself somewhere.
Yeah, you're better off, because right now I think Toon Town is still there, but
Write
it's
that down.
heavily like still kid friendly, and I don't even know if they still have it.
Yeah.
If they did had anything like it, it would have been in like the 90s. They would have gotten rid of it by now. And Roger Rabbit, I feel Disney treats it like how they treated Nightmare Before Christmas, because in the beginning they treated it like it was the stepchild. They didn't want to acknowledge that, they even made it. until they finally realize, wow, this is worth a lot of money. And then now you can't walk 2 feet outside after like August without seeing Jack Skellington and Oogie Boogie, and it's just all over the place constantly. And they just don't want to. I think it's just too adult for them to comfortably keep in their image, which I think is weird that they still have the ride. Does the ride still exist? But I think that's a Disneyland exclusive, not Disney World never got it.
Oh, the Toon Town ride?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's still there, which I guess, so I just checked it. It does, Toon Town is still out there, but I think in my head, I'm thinking more of, I want the live action equivalent of that world that exists in Who Framed Roger Rabbit, not the actual Toon Town that exists of all the like the wacky houses and the buildings and the animated, like I want the 1940s look with tunes integrated. Although I guess that just means I want to go back to like Chicago in the 40s.
Tim wants The Godfather, but there's cartoons.
There's like a Dick Tracy hybrid here.
I knew it was you, Fredo.
Please, Fredo.
It just like reveals the sheet, and it's like a cartoon horse head, and it's just like talking to him. It's like, "Hey, sorry about that. Didn't mean to scare you."
Whoop, and it just hops out of bed and goes back and gets on its neck and rides away.
Has like little tiny like Deadpool legs.
But the death of Sonny is still the death of Sonny. That's the only one that they don't. I wonder how they're going to oh my God.
Riddled.
Except at the end, he takes a glass of water and takes a sip, and then all of it just pours out.
slowly falls over to the ground.
So Eddie goes into the bar, and one of the people there is slumped over, and he asks what's going on. And apparently, one of the subplots to the movie, which I never picked up as a kid, another company called Cloverleaf was said to have just bought the Red Car Trolley Company, and they caused massive layoffs, and he was one of the layoffs. So that guy was severely depressed about it. So, without really skipping a beat, Valiant goes to sit at the bar. He goes to take a swig from a drink, but Dolores, his girlfriend and also owner of the bar, stops him. And he does owe her money too, which he needs to pay her back fast because the till is short, and he borrowed money from the till, which is insane to me. But
yeah, right. That's end of the day kind of problem.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's getting towards the end of the week. We're about to count our tills. You don't count them every night.
It's like,
you don't count them every shift.
It's like, no, we only count them at the end of the week. It's weird. We're always so short.
Oh, well.
And here's where another bar patron comes up to Valiant after hearing about his new employer, because Valiant starts he gives Dolores the check for $50 and explains where he got it. Another bar patron starts kind of heckling him about the whole thing working with tunes, and that sets Valiant off, and he attacks the guy. I never look at eggs the same way, because the guy was peeling a hard-boiled egg and he shoves it in the guy's mouth.
It was very violent.
It was. I did love the rhyme. It's like, I don't work for tunes. I work for RK Maroon. And I'm like, is this like a jingle? Like Scruff McGruff?
And then the beat starts coming in.
Yeah. Don't work for tunes. Work for RK Maroon.
I had a reaction to when he kicks the guy's chair out. The guy falls, slams his chin on the bar, and then he grabs his head and shoves his hard-boiled egg in his mouth. And it might be the most like visceral like violence in the movie, just with the physicality of it. And it seems like I don't remember a whole lot from the movie from when I watched it just now, but that triggered something like, oh, I remember watching this as a kid and thinking, holy shit, like that looked painful.
Or then he makes him bite the edge of the bar.
It's also so funny because like we have that sequence and it is violent, but like he doesn't really do anything to him. Like, yeah, he knocks him down, he hits his chin, he shoves an egg in his mouth. But it's not really that violent. Like when it happened, I had that same visceral reaction, but I thought in like the back of my mind, the reason I reacted is because I thought something way worse was going to happen. Like he was going to put a shot glass in his mouth and just like,
oh my God. Where it's like, I don't know if you guys ever saw the movie of Andrew Garfield, Under the Silver Lake, but he beats somebody up at some point because they're throwing eggs, and he like puts one of the eggs in their mouth, then starts punching them in the face. And I thought it was going to be like, oh, it's like that. It's like, nah, it's hard boiled. It's not as bad, I suppose. If anything, it's just helping you chew faster.
And the guy
Extra
like
calcium.
the guy almost like shrugs it off, like, you know, Bob Hoskins storms away angry after that, and the guy's like, geez, what's his problem?
Yeah, it's like, I was
It's
going to
like,
eat
dude,
that
you were
egg
just
anyway.
really insulted.
You really streamlined my lunch. Thanks.
But that's when Dolores drops the first bomb and like, oh yeah, he his brother got killed by a Toon. Like,
Dropped
oh,
a piano on his
okay.
head.
Also, sorry, let me know if I missed it. Was it implied that they're still together, or like, did they recently like, are they having they're rocky?
I think it's
Rocky.
yeah,
Yeah.
Okay.
because it makes it
I just
sound like
remember
they
him looking
still see
at
each other.
pictures later on.
Like they still see
Okay.
each other, but it sounds like he's more focused on other things now. So
There
it's,
were
oh, you
better
never take me
times in the
places. We never
past.
do things.
His two friends, Jack
Okay.
and Daniels.
He's focused on other things like Jack Daniels.
Yeah.
And not working for Toon.
You have to wonder though if like a human killed his brother, would like he move to Toon Town? Like that's a
I
real
don't work
vendetta.
for people, only tunes.
Killed
And
by a
at least-
human
I don't
Toon
do
duo.
humans.
He's like, I don't work for Toons or humans. I only work for animals.
I think it's a big deal too, because it's not like the iRobot universe where like Will Smith is trying to prove that a robot killed a human, and all of the humans are like, that's impossible. Robots can't hurt people. And you would think the same thing would happen with cartoons. Like, no, cartoons would never actually hurt and kill people, but I guess they do, because hearing that, oh yeah, Toon killed his brother, it's like, oh wow, that sucks. No
Yeah,
one
it's
ever
not like,
questions the
what?
Yeah.
I wonder if it's just like it happens accidentally sometimes because like their physics are so different
Mhm.
than like the real world. So it's just like, oh, I pushed him down like 10 flights of stairs. I thought he'd just get up and like pull his head out of his shoulders. So it's like, nope.
Yeah, he ain't getting up from that one.
Or even like there's that sequence when like the cops are in the warehouse after R.K. Maroney's death, and he like pulls out the hammer. He's like, hey guys, look at this. And it like shoots the fist out and like nearly like kills one of the officers. Like if that hits you, you're just dead. And they're just like, haha, look how fun this is.
I wonder if Toontown has its own crime. Like, are there serial killers
Clearly.
in Toontown?
Well, I mean, that's why there's the
Absolutely.
judge, right? Like that's his whole reason.
Yeah, but does he police Toontown, or he just polices toons that are outside of Toontown?
Oh, the way I took it was that he
Seems like
policed Toon
Toontown.
Town.
Oh,
He's the Judge Dredd of Toontown. That's
Yeah.
what it seems like.
I mean, yeah.
I am the law.
Makes you wonder what they did before that judge. Like, how were they dispensing justice, quote unquote?
Frontier,
lawless.
frontier
I think-
justice in Toontown.
Well,
Private.
it seems like the Toons just have like a judge system, right? Because at one point when Judge Doom comes out, Bob Hoskins is just like, oh, how did he become a judge? Like judges are just a thing in Toontown. It's like, okay.
He was elected in a local election, just like all the other judges.
Toontown's
Which
a
is not
one-party
how-
system.
Which I was gonna say, that's not how judges work here in current times. So it's like, oh, I kind of wish we had elected judges actually.
Yeah.
We do elect judges, just on a smaller level.
Yeah. The 2024 election, I got to choose judges.
Oh yeah. Well, is it then
It's on a
just
smaller
federal
level.
like federal courts are appointed, and state
yeah.
courts we.
Mm-hmm. And it's not even an election. It's just, are they doing a proper job? And if enough people say no, it gets like indicted or something.
Well, it's like voting for sheriff. It's like, who's like, vote for sheriff? There's one candidate. It's like, all right, you can be
How about
sheriff, I guess.
There's two candidates, and I don't know either of them, so I'm not voting for any
I mean,
of
it's
you.
it's sheriff. No, like it's like when you have to vote for the justice of the peace, and it's like there's 23 of them. They're like, pick 10, and I'm like, all right.
Who has the coolest name?
So we fast forward to the nightclub later that night. And this is where Maroon had told him go to this specific nightclub. I think it's called the Ink and Paint Club, where he's going to be able to find and track down Jessica, who works there.
Jessica.
So when Valiant enters the club, it's full. I haven't heard that meme in a while.
Jessica.
Valiant entering a full nightclub as Donald Duck and Daffy Duck are at it with dueling pianos.
I loved that scene so much.
Yeah, that is a great scene
because of like Looney Tunes and like Disney, like they are my favorite characters. So I'm like, oh man, it's the Ducks.
Well, I also just love Daffy being like, what's wrong with this guy?
So Valiant walks closer to the stage, and just as he does so, a guy randomly sprays disappearing ink onto his shirt, or at least so the guy says. When
It's a
Valiant
quick way to
looks
get your
down,
teeth punched in.
Yeah, right? It's so rude. Who the fuck would do that? When he looks down, he does watch the ink disappear, and this is where he realizes, oh, this is Marvin Acme. And the guy even says, like, don't worry, it's disappearing ink. You got nothing to worry about. And it's just like, why are you being a dick? Like, that's so... Who does that?
I mean, it's like walking in, somebody splashes water on you, you're like, it's okay, it'll dry. It's like, yeah, I don't... doesn't make it cool.
But then you find out it's like fucking Jeff Bezos or somebody that did that, and not just some random dude.
I mean, fair, wasn't that like Jake Paul and his brother's whole thing on Vines, where they just like run up to people, like shove them, and be like, "It's just a prank, calm down."
Well, that's why they wanted to see Mike Tyson beat the shit out of him so he could meet two boxers that night. But that's another story.
Yeah.
For this podcast right now.
Welcome to the wide world of sports by Screen Refresh.
We're a sports podcast.
It's kind of sad seeing Betty Boop waiting tables.
Yeah.
And like, it is nice to see.
It got tough after, things went from black and white to color. I mean,
became a man at the
still what you can.
And it's nice seeing that Eddie, after all of his anti-Toon talk and his anger towards Toons
like
before, he still sees Betty, and it's like an old friend of, he immediately is nice to her and just like catching up with her, and she explains that, well, work's slow and she's waiting tables now.
Like into Cameron
Diaz. It's a nice moment the allure to characterize that Eddie movie while also still
really just harking back to Jessica Rabbit in this one during this lounge scene, because it plays almost exactly
I'm just
the
picturing
same.
Tiny Nick with his tongue rolled out of his mouth and his eyes out.
Exactly the same as the mouse.
Oh god.
I'm also loving the narrative that every time Nick references how old he was when he saw this movie, he gets progressively younger.
Well, the movie came out in
He just becomes the baby
so...
from 2001.
It's like when I saw this when I was 3, I became a man when I was 2, and I was like, oh, like I was 4 days old. And
once you see the Jessica Rabbit, I mean, she turns heads in any scene that she goes on. So
well. Also, I thought it was so cool the way they animate the dress in this film while she's on stage, because it's like it sparkles almost like the dress itself is live action on a cartoon character. But I guess they did it by taking like a plastic bag and they scratched it off with Mickey Mouse, like steel wool, and then just shot light through it.
With that kind of imitation, Roger Rabbit is the Henry Cavill of Toon Town.
Yeah. That's true. If Bugs Bunny is like the I guess in his prime, like George Clooney, then.
Well, who does Bugs Bunny have?
Don't ruin my narrative.
Elmer Fudd?
What was the question? Sorry.
Well, Mickey Mouse has Minnie Mouse, and Jessica has Roger Rabbit. Who does Bugs Bunny have? Is it Elmer Fudd?
I think female Bugs Bunny.
Yeah, well,
female Bugs Bunny. You mean Lola?
No, him dressed up as.
Oh yeah, they did have Lola during Space Jam, which I don't know. Are they supposed to be romantically involved? I always thought he had a platonic thing with Daffy.
They're not. Anyway, since that joke failed miserably.
In the new Looney Tunes, isn't Bugs and Daffy roommates?
Yeah, I always thought it was like they never find anyone because they're always doomed to be bitter friends.
Could be. It's like a Carl and Lenny from Simpsons.
Yeah.
Sure.
I'll never work with another person with a speech impediment.
The song itself is actually a really cool kind of lounge jazz song in this. The music I ended up really enjoying, even aside. So I don't know if we didn't mention it, but Alan Silvestri does all of the score for this film. But the actual sung tracks, it wasn't Kathleen Turner doing the singing for this, but it was still, I think, a great sequence. It feels like the old
so
like 1940s,
Disney.
50s films of you have a film where all of a sudden they have a nightclub sequence where there is an actual performance in the middle of a movie that's not a musical.
Do you know, like, so before Jessica Rabbit, are they referencing actual movies from that era where they did that kind of thing? Or where did that trope start? Was it in movies that they had bombshell lounge singers? Or did they just kind of take it up a notch?
So
I mean, that's like
at
the
least
old
my-
femme fatale characters from old noir.
I mean, also
But
my
they did
thought
like
is
have those
that
kind of sequences. I was just like not.
yeah, I
honestly
mean, I
aware,
think
so-
this one specifically calls back to there is an old I'm trying to remember who it was, but it was a Red Riding Hood short. It was a long time ago where it's like this extremely attractive Red Riding Hood comes out on stage and like the wolf is sitting at a table and he's like if you think about like a wolf depiction of a man who's like drooling over himself about someone, and like it's a pretty good one for one of that.
Is that just what The Mask got that scene from? Because he does watch it.
Pretty much.
Oh yeah, that's right. He also does like the
Tex
tongue roll
Avery.
thing and everything.
Tex Avery, that's it.
Tex Avery, thank you. Yeah,
It all comes full circle.
yeah. They might have just been like referencing the same thing.
Possibly, yeah. So after Jessica performs, Valiant sneaks to her dressing room, peeking through the keyhole to see what's going on, but's caught by that massive gorilla bouncer when he first walked in, and he's thrown out of the club. He does sneak back over to the dressing room window, and with the camera watches Marvin playing patty cake with Jessica, snapping photos before stopping in disbelief. No, this
gotta
is
be
not a
kidding me.
euphemism. She is actually playing patty cake with Marvin, and she's even like, "Oh, please take that buzzer off before we start."
Well, I like when they flash to like the next day of him showing the pictures to Roger, and he's like one picture, then he flips to the next picture, then the next picture, and as he's doing it, it's the flip book of them just playing patty cake over and over. But I thought it was like there's so many well-written scenes and dialogue throughout this film that make me laugh even now, of when Roger's like, oh, she's this to my this and this to that, and he's like, the cream in my coffee, and he just jumps in and he says, well, you better start taking it black because Acme's got the cream now.
That's very noir in like
Mhm.
50s, 40s, 50s. Listen here, see, you better start taking the black because she's got the cream now. That's what it makes me think of.
Is there nothing Dean
What's his
can't
name?
do? Bob Hoskins Unleashed, 1940s cream-based gangsters.
I'm running a one-man show. I'll let you guys know when it's ready.
Excellent, good. That can release every third Monday of the month. We cut to Maroon's office. Roger's in tears as he's distraught from the news that of what Valiant just found. Valiant gives Roger the pictures. He makes the slideshow flip book of the pictures being shown like they're actually playing patty cake. And then Maroon offers Roger a drink as of like consolation, and this is where we learn that Toon, or specifically Roger, plus alcohol is bad, because then he becomes like a train whistle screaming as if this is the hottest thing on earth, like spicy hot.
It's like the reaction in Back to the Future 3 when they give him the whatchamacallit?
Yeah,
The wake up juice.
Except no passing out. He just
Shoots through the ceiling, destroys a room, and then is like, wow.
thanks. Yeah, when he does that, there's like screaming. The high pitched noise causes like glass and crystals to erupt and from the shriek. So with Valiant paid, Valiant's paid here. The rest of the money. Roger's furious at the thought of finding another fish in the sea, so to speak, as the men try to tell him, like, look, she's not the only woman on earth, kind of thing. You can find somebody else. And Roger just doesn't want to hear it. So he storms out of the room. And this is where we get to see one more of like the special effects wonders, where they have a perfectly cut hole of Roger's body through not only the glass but also the window blinds that was directly in front of it, happening in real time. And the two gentlemen just like staring out the window like, oh crap, that's what just happened. They didn't realize that he would get so upset. But at least from an onlooker perspective, I really like that.
Yeah.
That shot, and just it was so well done. So the next scene, while melancholy, is my favorite, and this is the one where I mentioned and how it's a true testament to the term "show, don't tell."
Mm-hmm.
In the scene, no dialogue. We see Valiant re-enter his office. He's going over the developed photos from the patty cake session, and then he sees that the camera that he borrowed had leftover vacation pictures that he had taken with Dolores. You know, we see Valiant smiling as he looks them over, the goofy pictures with him and Dolores. And then you can see the pain of memories reopen old wounds as he sees pictures of him and his late brother on that same trip. And then the camera kind of pans down and away from him to look at old newspapers, which one of them made me laugh because I guess they helped in a case to clear Goofy of spy charges. But there's a bunch of different things on the desk. And you see there's also another desk abutting his that's just completely ridden with dust. And we learn that this was his partner in their private eye agency, and it was his brother as well. So we see news clippings of him and his brother through the years, graduating from the police academy, solving cases for Toon Town, growing up, working for even the Ringling Brothers, Barnum and Bailey. And then the camera moves over to see Valiant once again, but this time he's just passed out from drinking at his desk when he's woken up by Lieutenant Santino from the local police department.
I feel like this scene should be used in film classes of just...
It is.
Here's how to effectively get across years of character backstory and all of these emotive beats and things like that, while not really taking up a lot of time or having to talk down to the audience of, well, I mean, Eddie, it's almost like your brother who died years ago that you're still distraught over.
But yeah, no, I agree. It's ridiculous on how often it's just, can't we figure this stuff out on our own for once?
Yeah.
And it's just so spoon-fed to us that a lot of movies just don't even care anymore. And this is one of the few instances where I don't need any of the hand-holding. There's only like
the Emperor's adopted daughter?
There's like 3 scenes of exposition, and all the rest of it you pick up if you're just watching the movie.
Yes, Kano, my number one man.
Who lost an eye when you...
And that BB gun accident as kids.
They just dress down every character. It's like, I'll
tell you what is taught in film classes and deserves to be. Toy Story. The opening of Toy Story is a masterclass in exposition.
True.
Written well into the film.
That's bullshit. The Mr. Potato Head is never seen robbing any bank through the whole rest of the movie. It sets up a lie right from the start, and I don't believe any of that nonsense. And the pig, the ham, the piggy bank, he's a good guy through the whole rest of the movie. What does that establish that is so hoity-toity in the film school world?
We're about to break open your entire worldview.
I don't remember anything about the opening of Toy Story.
Join us next month when we...
You should remember it, but it just sets up the movie really, really well.
Yeah, it really does. It does that like hierarchy of like, Woody's number 1. And then, oh no, there's a new toy in town.
A Woody's number 1.
So
That's
when
Stewie?
I couldn't quite, kind of like a...
Woody's number 1. I can't do it as well as Tim just did.
So when Valiant's woken up, Santino tells him that, just long story short, just, hey, Marvin Acme's dead. And then they immediately cut over to the scene of the crime at the Acme factory warehouse where a safe was dropped on his head. So we see at the scene of the crime, and it's kind of messed up on how that's even said too, because Santino looks at the deceased and then the Valiant, and it's just like a tune to drop a safe on a guy's head, and it's an obvious jab at Valiant's dead brother.
Well, I like the chalk outline. It's just a chalk outline, and then the head is missing with the safe stuck in the ground.
Yeah. The cops investigating the scene start playing around with some of the cartoonish products found there. It's like that that wooden hammer that has like the glove on it and
the portable hole,
other crazy props that are there. And the cops even mock Valiant at that time too, whether to call him Valiant or Jack Daniels. And then Jessica arrives at the scene as well, and just as when the investigators collecting evidence that apparently there was paint from Roger's gloves found on the rope that was suspending the safe in the air. And then once Jessica kind of shows up, she walks right up to, less walks but more storms right up to Valiant and slaps him across the face, because I guess she finally heard news that, you know, the patty cake session has leaked, and that's why he's so distraught and missing.
And then she gets so angry as she walks away, she becomes translucent. If you guys go back and watch that scene, you can see the car behind her as she's walking away.
Oh, wait, really?
Yeah, you can see clean
You know what?
through
I
her.
noticed that. I feel like... Never mind. I was going to say, I felt like I saw that on the live action people too, and I was wondering if it was a trick of light reflection. I like how they planted... the guy that gets killed, he's the patty cake guy, right?
Yes.
That's the whole thing, right? Yeah. It's very much planted. It's like, how did he die? A safe was dropped on his head. How did his brother die? A piano was dropped on his head. So it's like that, just like a little clue there about the culprit later on.
We get another breadcrumb too, where when Judge Doom arrives, Eddie kind of leans over to Santino. Is like, how the hell did this guy run Toons? And apparently, when he was up for election, Judge had a bunch of money spread across Toon Town to buy the election. So that makes sense on how later on we discover how he had robbed a bank for a zillion simoleons.
Right.
But I don't know if a zillion is if he was being facetious and just saying a lot of money, or if that actually was the amount of money.
Well, we
that was
established
stolen.
what $50 back in 1946 is $800 now. So
that inflation is ridiculous. How much for the $1 can of like Arizona iced tea? That'll be 600 million simoleons. Thank you.
yeah, but a hot dog at Costco still $1.50
With a soda.
Now I want a Costco. Never mind.
So here's where we get to meet every millennial's worst enemy, so to speak, and that is the dip. That is the key weapon that Judge Doom uses against all of the Toons.
Wow, they really moved up in their adversaries.
Yeah, they did.
Wait, if Dr.
So-
Doom's here, then who's fighting the Fantastic Four? You're all getting dipped.
Do you remember me, Reed?
I mean, I feel like that would work against Mr. Fantastic, though, right? I mean, he kind of is like a Toon.
Until Doom has to face off against old Blue Eyes
That's
himself.
the wild reveal. He's been a cartoon this whole time.
So dip is revealed to be turpentine, acetone, and benzene, which are all just paint thinners. So during the scuffle, when the coroner accidentally kind of knocked the gurney into a crate of shoes that were animated, we got all of them back in the case except one that was, poor thing, that was trying to rub itself affectionately against Judge Doom. But that's where Doom decides to use this to showcase what the dip does. And
Also,
this is...
sorry.
No, it's okay.
No,
I mean, it's the most screwed up thing a millennial will see in their early childhood.
I mean, I feel like it's
that.
like this, and it's the radiator scene in Brave Little Toaster.
It's just like, okay, Toon on human murder, bad. Human on Toon murder, okay?
Oh, you're
No
starting
problem.
to get it.
Like, what? He just murdered it. Like, clearly it had thoughts.
It's
and
just
it
a
was
shoe.
resisting.
very clearly a living
It's
thing.
the same as us. It's the same as if, like, squash a spider. It's fine.
It's fine.
But they
They say you're never more than 10 feet away from a shoe.
That shoe never said anything. It just looked worried. We can't see the spider looking worried, but he's very worried when my thumb's racing towards him.
Also
I don't
the
use my
fact
thumb. I use my
that,
shoe. I
like,
don't use my thumb to kill spiders.
so that's how they treat Toons in this world. why do they pay all of their Toon actors of like, oh, they're really keeping this studio afloat, but also we will murder their kind in the streets using acid?
Well, they don't.
Do they pay them?
Wait, they don't?
They don't. He literally said they pay him in peanuts.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
well,
right.
In the case of Dumbo, anyway.
Oh yeah, because he said they were borrowing some people from Disney or something.
True.
I thought he was just specifically talking about those characters and not all of them. But I mean, then that would also make sense of they're getting like free labor out of all of the Toon Town. Which then means, why are the towns even going along with this? Why don't they just stay in Toon Town?
That's probably not until the 60s during the Revolution.
The streets are slick with the blood of, we get like the French Revolution Toon Town. I always wanted to see Roger Rabbit do empty chairs at empty tables.
Look down, look down. Don't look them in the eye.
I want to see Judge Doom doing the and I'm Javert.
Yeah, when he jumps off the bridge.
24601.
Valiant goes back to his office, and here he sees a woman lighting. What? I don't know that reference at all. I have nothing to add to it.
I'm laughing at you moving on, and it is funny. It's fine.
Oh.
It's the odd juxtaposition of Dean and I having completely separate thing in between the episode before it goes back to, and now we're here.
So Valiant sees a woman lighting a cigar for a baby in a stroller. Valiant runs over, but sees it's just baby Herman, who's extremely not safe for work here. It made me double take when he said I'm a 50-year-old with I have a 50-year-old lust with a 3-year-old dinky. Did not expect that.
Yeah, that's from the book. Although I think in the book it's like 36.
Yeah, that's one of two lines that made it from the book into the movie.
So that means they read that line of the book and they're like, you know, guys, we gotta scrap all the rest of this, but this line about this child Toon who's 50 years old and his dink.
Yeah, they kept this line, and they kept the Jessica Rabbit line about like, do you know how hard it is to? Oh no, like
I'm not bad. I'm just drawn that way.
Yeah, just drawn that way. Yeah.
So Herman confides that he wanted to talk to Valiant about Acme's murder, and he swears that Roger didn't kill Acme since Acme was never found with a last will and testament at where he died. So because of that, Baby Herman's insisting that Acme was going to leave the Toon Town, and that the whole thing just stinks to high hell. Valiant ends up kicking Baby Herman out for accusing Valiant of getting Roger in trouble. And when he goes back into his office, he has his afternoon drink. And this is where when Valiant slams back the shot of whatever he's drinking, he kind of looks down at the picture from Patty Cake, and through the magnified bottom of his drinking glass, he does see that you can see like the sports almanac kind of same picture kind of thing.
Oh,
where when he looks closer, it's like, oh, you can clearly see that he has the last will and testament in his pocket.
That's what it said. That's right. It was hard to tell at first, but realizing what it's supposed to say.
He grabs a magnifying glass and he kind of just to confirm it. But he's just like, I'm done. I'm not going to bother with this. Screw it. Eddie tries to go to sleep, and he pulls down his Murphy bed, and then when he gets in the bed, he realizes that Roger's in the bed with him as well. I like this bit where he asks him, like, how the hell do you know? Like, how the hell did you get here? And Roger's like, well, I asked this guy, then I asked that guy, and he didn't know. Then I asked this person, and then that person, but the guy that runs the liquor store knew where you were, so that made me laugh. I was like, oh, then everybody knows where you are. He goes to throw him out, and while Roger's resisting getting thrown out, he's insisting that he was born not to kill people, but to make people laugh, which comes up later. Confessing what he'd done after he last saw Valiant and Maroon, he went back to the Ink and Paint Club, didn't see Jessica, and decided to write a love letter with a blank piece of paper he had found in her dressing room. And just as he starts to read it, that's when the weasels show up. When the weasels come in, was that supposed to be the Maltese Falcon in the hallway? Or is that just like a subtle homage to it? because there was a falcon statue in the hallway of
Oh, I
Valiant's
missed
office.
I mean,
There's a big
probably.
falcon
Oh, I
statue.
see it.
Yeah, it may not be the Maltese falcon, but just
It
it's
would
one of the
make
most
sense.
well-known.
Yeah.
It's probably you're probably right, honestly. Like if it's a heavy reference.
Yeah.
Good movie.
So during when before the weasels showed up, the hijinks ensued where Roger jokingly handcuffs himself to Valiant, and that's when the weasels, of course, start knocking on the door. So this is where Valiant has the great idea of pretending to be doing his laundry in the kitchen sink and having Roger in the water under the layer of soap so the weasels couldn't see them. And they're, searching the place. They don't find anything. They question Valiant, but he doesn't give up Roger. And then at this point, Valiant shoves soap into the leader's mouth, and all the other guys start laughing, but it leaves that breadcrumb of like, if you guys don't stop laughing, you're going to die laughing.
Which I guess there's 2 ways to kill a Toon then?
Dip or pure
that got
joy?
me, and I was just like, why didn't I think of that one?
I mean, if I had a choice in the matter, I'd rather do that, but
the dip did not look fun.
No. Even the 3 chemicals, they're all pretty much like clear liquids, and the way that they had it look in the movie was just so dangerous. Like, even as a human being, I would not want to touch the stuff.
Well, I also like at the end of the movie when like he reveals his whole plan and he's like, it's full of dip, superheated dip, and I'm like, why'd you have to heat it?
Icing on the cake.
It's like, God, no, it's
so much
hot
worse
too.
now. Hot dip.
You can get high on it when you. It's also a drug.
All those
inhale it.
chemicals leave off a huge ton of vapor and fumes.
Oh, yeah.
So the end of the thing, they must have been high as balls.
That's why his eyes look like that.
It's just constantly around the tip.
It's not a Toon
good
thing.
point.
He's
He's
just
like-
high as a kite.
He's like 5,000 gallons of it, and I'm like, I don't know if this warehouse is ventilated enough for that.
No.
I'm also not sure. I've seen Toon Town. I don't think 5,000 gallons is enough to destroy.
I don't think it would have. It would have gotten
I'm
diluted.
Sure that water cannon probably shoots 5,000 gallons every 10 minutes.
Not to mention, like, how big is Toon Town? Like, you're insinuating that you'll wipe out the entire thing so quickly. Like, what would be left over? Is it just going to be a void of nothing? Is it going to just be like the land of just like?
Oh, because even
like
the
in
ground
Matrix,
is animated.
Yeah, like in the Matrix when they're in that like room before they actually plug in, and it's like where all the guns show up, and it's just like a white room. Is that what it looks like when you enter Toontown afterward?
I mean, would it just be the desert around Los Angeles?
Probably is.
God help you if you were within 100 feet of the entrance of Toontown before he runs out of dip.
Panicking, trying to find a supplier for like another 5,000 gallons of acetone and all the other things. He's raiding like local beautician parlors.
We need your biggest supply. For the record, I would rather kill a Toon with the dip because you could throw them into a vat of it and it's over. But if you have to make them die laughing, that's very personal, and you have to like really experience it.
That's some Heisenberg level shit there, man.
Unless you find out their favorite movie and it's a comedy and you just get them to watch it.
I mean, did you see the end of this movie? I think those weasels will just laugh at anything.
Yeah. Yeah, they're pretty susceptible. Maybe that's just like one of the things with Toons. Like, it's just a common thing that they can die of laughter because they just get like so easily like on a roll.
How do they reproduce? Is it like some guy literally drawing a new one?
It's patty cake, dude. It's patty cake.
Yes.
I mean, it's got to be, right? Like the line from Jessica Rabbit makes me think that like there is like the great animator in the sky who draws them.
Also, I like how Dean said it's patty cake, like the end of Chinatown. It's patty cake, Nick.
Patty cake,
It's
Roger.
patty cake, Eddie.
The
Forget it, Eddie. It's patty cake.
It's Toontown, Eddie.
The Weasels eventually leave, and Valiant brings Roger to Dolores's bar across the street. And I do like how they hide out in an old speakeasy, and this is where we get more exposition dump. And this is like the second time this actually will happen through the movie, and all the rest of it is just kind of shown to you. So he tells Dolores someone made a patsy out of Valiant, and he was set up. And he's convinced that whoever did kill Acme is still looking for the will, as the Weasels were still looking for it after Acme was killed. So something is definitely up. I did like the joke where Roger could take the handcuff off his wrist, but only when it's funny to do so.
Which I appreciate so much, of like, you just have the power to do something as long as it's part of a bit.
Yeah. Because he's struggling trying to get the handcuff off with a hacksaw, and hey, can you hold this down for me and make sure it's steady? And Roger just slips out of the handcuff, and he's just the look of like the look of like audacity on Valiant's face. Like, are you kidding me? Like, you could have done this at any point.
It's big Rizzo the Rat energy from Muppet Christmas
Say,
Carol.
like, that's
wait, you could just crawl through there at any time? Yeah, why?
Yeah, the gate breaking into Scrooge's house. Yeah.
Yeah, same vibes. I love that. Valiant asks Dolores to check the probate while he heads back to his office to clean up, and he leaves Roger there. But that's where Jessica ends up meeting Valiant, and with some awkward flirting later, Jessica tells him that Maroon wanted to blackmail Acme, and that's why if she didn't pose for those pictures with Patty Cake, that Maroon wouldn't let Roger work in Hollywood again. So there's a lot of moving pieces to this that Valiant is slowly uncovering. But unfortunately, this is when Dolores also arrives at like the worst time ever, and she catches Valiant literally with his pants down. Even though nothing was happening, I don't know, the way that he flirted with her, it was very... I didn't like it. Like,
something would have happened.
Yeah, like he keeps like, I didn't drink the Kool-Aid when it comes to Jessica Rabbit. Meanwhile, every single time he's alone with her, he's like, you don't understand what you do to us guys.
He's in denial.
Yeah,
Thanks, Murtaugh.
I didn't drink the Kool-Aid, but boy, does it smell good.
Right?
If we were alone in a room together for half an hour, oh, I might drink it.
Well, yeah, like I feel like it ends up going against how I like the relationship he has with Dolores, or at least that they're still together and they're trying to make things work, and he needs to make her proud of him again. But then like we have these sequences of him like just teetering on the edge of like, oh my God, Jessica Rabbit, that I feel pulls a bit from the Dolores relationship for me.
That could just be like the drunken side of him, where he's just like, oh, I'm drunk, there's a hot lady.
She's animated.
I'm watching the scene as we're talking. When he bends down to pick his pants up, I didn't notice this, but he stands up, his head hits her boobs, and they like bounce.
Oh yeah, there's a sound effect for it.
He says sorry too. Like it happens constantly with her. So everyone kind of leaves at the same time. Jessica leaves, Dolores is upset, and she leaves, and then he chases after Dolores. And in the midst of like the massive apologies he's laying out, oh, I would never go for somebody like that. Dolores does say that what she found at the probate, that it wasn't actually Maroon, but Cloverleaf that's trying to get Toon Town, and they put in the highest bid for Toon Town, and unless Acme's will shows up by midnight tonight, they win the bid and will now own Toon Town. So he's definitely uncovering this big plot that's happening, and he is the only one that's kind of got a leg up on the situation. And it's kind of what I think this is what finally pulls him in and gets him to quote unquote take the case, even though he's definitely not getting paid for this one.
I do love how every like mob movie, especially like Yakuza story, ends up just being, it's real estate.
I mean, ultimately, yeah.
Isn't
that real life though?
That's where the money is.
It's like, I'm gonna murder all these people. Why? Real estate.
I mean, isn't this the second movie? Didn't Cars have the same plot? Or didn't they want to have it? Yeah.
Wasn't Cars Doc Hollywood?
Yeah. He played Hudson, I think.
Oh, wait, what?
What?
The plot of Cars, isn't that just the plot of Doc Hollywood with Michael J. Fox?
No. Oh, maybe a little bit. Both. Because it wasn't there supposed to be like an interstate that was going to get opened, and because of that interstate, it would essentially kill off that town, and they had to delay and stop the interstate from being created.
Oh, isn't that... Sorry, you just triggered something in my brain. I was like, that's also the plot of Once Upon a Time in the West.
Yeah. If I had a nickel, I guess I'd have 3 nickels. Probably have a lot more. So as like since Dolores left and they're basically walking back to the bar after she mentions that Cloverleaf was the one that put in the bid for Toon Town, they hear music coming from the bar and singing, and they realize that it's Roger. So when they go in, they see that Roger's singing the Looney Tunes theme, or singing to the Looney Tunes theme, which is actually called Merry Go Round Broke Down. But unfortunately, they weren't the only ones to hear this, because also the Weasels heard it from down in the sewer, a la TMNT style. They poke up from the sewers by lifting up the manhole cover, and they hear what's going on. Valiant grabs Roger, throws him back into the speakeasy, and just as he does that, that's when Judge Doom arrives, and he offers $5,000 for any tip.
Which, that is so much money back then.
Yeah, no shit. On top of the fact that he was disrespecting a veteran when he does it, because he grabs the empty sleeve of a one-armed man who's the veteran, because you could see the Medal of Honor that he clearly has on his chest, and all the different decorations that he has, just to wipe clean the chalkboard. And then he writes 5,000. I had to like triple take to make sure it was 5,000 and not 500. I wasn't sure.
5,000. I think we've established that that money would be bonkers.
We don't know how much it is, but it's a lot. And we can't do the math for you.
Well, forget the 2004 or the 2024 to the 1946 conversion. I want to hear the 1946 conversion from dollar to simoleon, because clearly Judge is loaded. So no one does take the bait, and instead of offering money, he does the one thing that's the most irresistible thing to a tune that one can possibly do, and that's sing the first part of Shaving a Haircut.
I did like that gag.
So he goes around doing the knocking dun 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 over and over again. Valiant's looking through the peephole, and I like how he's like, what the hell is this guy doing? Like, Roger, are you okay? And he looks back, and Roger is just like completely losing it. He's barely hanging on by a thread. And then once the judge does it, like right in front of where the speakeasy is, that's where Roger bursts through the wall to finish the song by yelling out 2 bits.
I mean, honestly, that would get me too. The impulse to finish, even the knock, if somebody just does I have to do the on the other side.
Bop, bop.
So since Roger's now exposed, Doom grabs him and almost dumps him into a vat of dip. I like this bit too, because when the judge is trying to like shove him in, and Roger's obviously resisting because it means death, Valiant realizes and remembers that bit from back in Maroon's office when he drank liquor, on how well he took it then, that he could do the same thing now. So he grabs a drink and he's like, hey, what about a final drink for the guy? And Doom allows it, surprisingly. And then they do like the duck season, rabbit season bit back and forth. It's like, here, you want this drink? No, I really don't want this drink. You want this drink? No, I really don't want this drink. You don't want this drink. I really do want this drink. And then he takes it and just pounds it back. I always liked it when they were able to organically do that in movies and stuff.
Yeah.
So Roger does his drunk whistle thing, causing the commotion to knock over, causing enough of a commotion to knock over the dip and escape.
I like that Eddie uses the distraction to throw hands on all the weasels. It's just like instantly, it's just like he just starts slugging everything that's in the room.
I wanted to see Valiant just go unhinged and just loose cannon, let him free, because he beat the shit out of that one guy, and he was holding back when it came to like the guy with the hard-boiled egg.
Yeah.
Can you imagine if he wasn't holding back? I wanted to see that fight.
Or if he had more eggs.
You can almost say that he's hard-boiled.
So Roger and Valiant escape, and then they enter the Weasel's paddy wagon. And then as they're trying to figure out how to drive the car, they're in the front half of the car, and they hear a familiar voice. Roger opens the little peephole thing, whatever.
Like
viewport, to see that it's their friend Benny, a Toon cab. And they end up using him to flee the scene instead of the Weasel car.
Is it just me? Are there a lot of cabbies in movies named Benny?
I mean, probably, yeah.
Oh, okay. I mean, specifically, the one that came to mind was this is a bad reference, but Halloween Town.
I like Halloween Town. I think the thing that I'm more confused at is why is it that every cab character always has a New York accent? It's never like a cabbie from like, I'm a cabbie in LA with a New York accent.
It's a Brooklyn specific.
No, because
it's always Brooklyn.
That's where cabs are born.
And he even mentioned the Brooklyn Dodgers, which I thought was amusing.
Oh, yeah.
I like how then when we were talking about Super Mario Brothers, the whole line about like, oh, there used to be dinosaurs here? Yeah, there used to be Dodgers here too. It's like there's a through line of Dodgers related material for Bob Hoskins.
So a typical citywide chase happens. There's a lot of cartoon hijinks too, with like Benny has like a special lever where he's able to go on.
It's like extendo wheels.
Yeah, and he's able to drive over other cars because of it.
He's like a speed racer car.
Yeah. This joke made me laugh out loud, and where he's still really high up. He's still really high up, and he's driving toward a bridge, and he yells up to Roger, what do you call the middle of a song? And then it's like, wait, what? And then the camera cuts to his perspective, and you see the bridge coming up, and you hear him scream from that. That got me to laugh out loud.
Well, I just love the nonchalant, like, what do you call the middle of a song? Oh, I don't know, maybe a bridge.
I love that. They give the Weasels the slip, and then they end up hiding out in a movie theater. And then here is where Valiant opens up a bit to Roger, and the last bit of explanation and exposition dump, explaining like how his brother got killed. Someone broke into the First National Bank of Toon Town and got away with a zillion simoleons. They never found out who he was, but all he remembers was him standing over Valiant with burning red eyes and his high, squeaky voice, disappearing into Toon Town afterward.
So do they not have any like Toon Town forensics or like any paper trail? Is it like non-extradition in Toon Town?
I don't think they even had DNA evidence back then.
It's just too silly.
Once you get to Toon Town, they're like, we protect our own out here.
I think.
Can you imagine the Toon DNA, like looking under the microscope and like the DNA being wacky?
They're interrogating the DNA on the slide. We'll never tell.
They do the interrogation, and it's like the Detective Pikachu interrogation of Mr. Mime.
I should rewatch that. I wish I could do that as screen refresh. That movie was way better than it deserved to be.
Had no right being that great.
Dolores arrives at the theater bringing Eddie his quote-unquote stuff. It's never explained what specifically, but Eddie apologizes for the bar being wrecked, and they're about to have a moment, but just like C-3PO interrupting Han and Leia, Roger Rabbit interrupts that special intimate moment. So they kind of have a game plan in place, or at least they were going to move on to the next thing. But just as they're walking out, since this is the 40s, this is where they have like those news reels that play during the movie, whatever you're watching, to give you just like current events. And this is where a local news reel mentions how Cloverleaf had purchased the Pacific trolley line and Maroon Cartoon, making this the biggest real estate purchase ever. And this is what Valiant overhears, and he realizes this was the missing piece to that puzzle that he's been trying to figure out. So with this new piece of evidence, he rushes back to the Maroon's he rushes back to Maroon Studios to confront Maroon. At his office, Roger hides out by the car when Valiant goes up to question him, and Valiant corners Maroon, where he ends up spilling the beans when he's finally coerced that Maroon wanted to sell the studio, but Cloverleaf wouldn't buy it unless Acme also sold his half to Cloverleaf. Since he wouldn't do it, Maroon set up Jessica to blackmail Maroon into selling, but before he could finish explaining all the remaining details, he's shot in the back by an unknown assailant.
As a child, I missed all of this real estate stuff going on.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. It makes no sense, right?
Mm-hmm. All I paid attention to is the fact that Roger got knocked out when Eddie went upstairs.
Yeah.
And then he got thrown into a car, and like, what happened?
Oh, the tie thing got me. Like, I was like,
Yeah.
oh, man, that's... Oh.
Also, it just blows my mind that it's like, this is still a movie that Disney signed off on and like Warner Brothers allows their characters. And then somebody is spilling the beans and then is assassinated by a shadowy figure carrying a revolver.
A Joker-style revolver, too, because it's got like a 12-inch barrel.
Yeah.
I had a realization about this scene that I just changed my mind about, but I feel like I think it's shown that Eddie is standing so close to Maroon that he turns and sees the gun, and I think in most cases he's not a cop, but you would think, oh, he would grab the guy or push him down and shove him out of the way. No, he sees the gun and dips like, oh shit, which I think is actually a realistic reaction, because I think being in that situation, especially if it's like not anybody I know, my family, or just like this guy, and I see a gun, like I'm retreating. Like I think that's most people's.
He grabs a guy by the shoulders and pushes him in front of him.
Do you think Spielberg took this shot and used it in Jurassic Park?
Which one?
Because when
the T-Rex had the revolver and shot.
when the gun comes out, it's perfectly in line with the picture of a gun, so the silhouette matches it almost perfectly.
Damn, why did I did not catch that?
Because in Jurassic Park, then we see the shadow of the raptor behind the mosaic of the raptor painting, and it matches it almost perfectly.
I want to say it's just a parallel idea, but I mean, it's fun to think that he saw this and it made him think about that.
I think Spielberg stole it.
Didn't he produce this?
It's like poetry, it rhymes.
I was going to say, he's definitely attached to it. Yeah.
Well, Steven's the one that was able to, I want to say coerce, but the article said convince. But he was able to get all of the different cartoon companies to even sign off on this, because it's not just like Warner Brothers and Disney, but they also had like, Tex Avery. They also had, the Betty Boop stuff. They're all owned by different companies, not just like Warner Brothers and Disney. So he had a lot of involvement getting everyone to sign on. I don't know.
Yeah, because I know, I don't think he's listed directly as a producer, but it's Amblin,
Yeah.
so I mean, he had to have been.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know the extent beyond he gets some parts moving.
When Eddie looks out the window, he sees Jessica running away, and he thinks that, he didn't see anybody else, so we believe it's Jessica who shot Maroon, and that this plot is getting deeper than she was leading on. So Valiant gets in the car and chases Jessica, but stops just before hitting the tunnel that leads directly into Toon Town, and this is Tim's best favorite scene. This was a really cool one too.
I do love that.
When he ditches his real world gun and opens up a box from the bag of stuff that he asked for from Dolores. And it's a gun gifted to him by Yosemite Sam for getting him out of Huskow. And inside is an animated gun with like 6 Western cowboy kind of looking bullets.
I remember the scene as a kid and being so mad because he has this fancy gun for Yosemite Sam with like these bullets that are like people essentially. And he immediately wastes one of his 6 shots shooting at out of bottle, and I just remember being a kid and being so furious that
Well,
like
this
they
is like
revealed the fancy gun with the cool bullets, and he's just like, oh yeah, bam.
But then I
All
wonder,
right.
it's like, where does does the bullet come? It's sentient, so does it come back when it's done? And it's like, okay, let's keep going, or is it just like, okay, I'm spent, I'm gonna head home now?
I'm
Does it die
retired.
afterward?
It's like a version
bee.
of Yondu's arrow.
Yeah, if Yandu's arrow talked,
Yep.
and,
I mean,
and was
probably
aware
it
it was
talks to
being
him
used as
in
an
his head.
arrow.
It had a soul.
Because I mean, it's the equivalent of if after you use a Pokemon, it just dies, and it's like, okay, well, I'm gonna use one of my 6 here to just, I don't know, for fun, punch that tree. Yeah, well,
He's
It
so
always
much
killed
stronger now.
what are you, Andy from Fatal Fury?
It's like that conversation we had about in Lethal Weapon regarding like the 6-shooter versus like the Beretta.
Oh,
Like I'll
yeah.
choose the Beretta every time, having 6 shots and just to waste one on, I mean, it was symbolic though, because that was him kicking the drinking habit.
So in effect,
But-
that bullet actually did more good for him than any of the rest of those bullets, and he fired 3
Well-
later that just left.
Right, so that was the thing.
Left.
Like he fires that one bullet, works perfectly. Later on, he tries to use the gun and fires 3 times, all duds. Throws the gun away. Like,
He's probably thinking at
What-
that
what-
point, it's like, I should have kept my real gun.
Oh, I wonder too. He fired the first shot in the real world, and he fired the remaining shots in Toon Town. Do the bullets behave or forced to behave more like a real bullet in the real world? And were they given more creative freedom once they're back in Toon Town that they can do whatever the hell they want?
What if the bullets are just normal bullets, and Eddie's been drunk since the beginning of this film?
Just because he kicks the habit now doesn't mean he's not sober yet.
Yeah, it doesn't sober him up. Like Jessica
Also, how
comes out and
messed-
just sees him holding a normal gun, firing into the sky and talking in 6 voices.
It's like, also, how messed up is it that Yosemite Sam gives him this gun for like getting him out of Huskow, and he gives them duds for the gun?
Also, the fact that it's like a gift
I
from
think just not
Yosemite Sam
intelligent.
that he's been carrying for this long, and it's like, oh, it's part of my stuff. It's time. I need my stuff. And then he chucks it into a dumpster as soon as he fires the rest of the bullets.
Isn't Yosemite Sam a paid actor though? Of course he's gonna have dum rounds.
I did think it was funny, like during the scenes when he has the cartoon gun. At least I believe it's rotoscoped, because at certain times when the camera's slightly, kind of zoomed out from him, you can see he clearly has like a prop gun that looks like the cartoon, but it's not animated. Like it's just clearly a prop.
Huh.
And then there's like one scene when he's talking to Jessica Rabbit where it's a little bit closer than it should be, and they haven't rotoscoped it. It's just a prop, and it's just like, oh yeah, that doesn't look so great.
So now that he's sobered up, he drives into the fever dream known as Toon Town. Even when it was like the sunshine and rainbows portion, when he's like driving into it, that still freaked me out. And then you see like the rundown alleyways and all the graffiti everywhere, and just no one abides by any kind of traffic laws. No thanks. He thinks he finds Jessica in an apartment building, and I liked a little bit leading up to when he takes the elevator, and it's
Oh,
God,
Droopy.
what's his name? Yeah, he's the elevator attendant.
I don't know why I liked Droopy growing up in the Droopy cartoons.
I did.
They were kind of fun. They were in a Mr.
Something
Magoo kind of
different.
way.
Yeah. You didn't have a lot of cartoons, at least not that a lot that I remember, because it was predominantly like bugs.
Yeah.
It was nice when he came on as a change of pace. He gets up to Jessica's apartment. He is able to just walk in, and then that's when he realizes that he's actually mistaken he's mistaken Jessica for a lookalike named Nina Hyena. More hijinks as he now runs away from Nina Hyena, who wants to just affectionately love him. And this is where we see the legendary scene where he falls from the super high up building, and he runs into not only just Bugs Bunny, but also Mickey Mouse.
Because I guess the deal was you can use the characters, but they have to have the same amount of screen time. So it's like when Donald appears, Daffy appears. When Mickey appears, Bugs appears.
Yep.
But also, it really is a moment of like, this is like Superman and Captain America meeting.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly.
The biggest powerhouses in their name, sharing the screen for the first and last time.
You would think that they would want to go back and do more of those types of things, of bringing them together. Although I figured like they don't need the money.
Split the profits and the cost risk.
The next time something like this happens, I feel, was in Wreck-It Ralph when we got to see like Zangief with Bowser.
True, yeah.
It's the same kind of feeling because they were very much like, Bowser has to do this, but Zangief has to do that, and Bison can only say this line, and there's so many stipulations from the companies that own their products that it was just almost obsessive.
Mickey Mouse has a line here that it's not a wild line, but it's, for Mickey, it does seem interesting that they had him say this.
Instead
I think
of the
they're
N-word,
talking about Bugs Bunny getting to shoot. He's like, "You're gonna get killed." Like the fact that Mickey Mouse is saying you're going to get killed, it's just really.
You're gonna die, Eddie.
I've never. It's so mundane, and it's like, yeah, that's what's happening. He's falling to his death. But just hearing Mickey Mouse say that is really
jarring.
strange to me.
Your ass is grass. Woo-hoo.
I don't know how Valiant survives either, because he hits the ground, doesn't he?
No, so Nina catches him.
Lena catches him.
Although,
right.
Also, I guess like physics work differently, but if he has that velocity going downward, just because he's caught in somebody's arms, still means he's hitting with the impact into their arms.
Yeah,
but it's a Toon that catches him though, so they can defy physics.
True.
Yep.
Unless they're made of vibranium, so they absorb the impact.
It's the sudden stop that kills the human body.
never the fall. He manages to get trick Nina into running into a wall, and that's how he gives her the slip. So then he ducks into an alley, and this is where Jessica saves Valiant from getting shot by Judge Doom. And with how serious he was throughout the whole movie, it just seemed really weird on how, like, you know, you killed Maroon, and Judge Doom is just like, yep. And he just like hysterically like runs away.
It's like the Skeletor "see you later" meme.
Yeah. It's like all of this build up, and it's just like, yep, you're right.
Unless it's because now he's in Toon Town.
Maybe. And like his plan is so close to working, and he's just like, whatever.
Also, I do like how while Eddie is in Toon Town, his shadow is animated. Like, aside from the sequence where his shadow literally talks to him, but just when he's walking past other things, or like when he's standing and the sun is cast on him, you see that he's real, but his shadow's animated in such a subtle but cool touch that then they turn into the gag.
That. And that's so brilliant, because I remember seeing a documentary years ago on how they were saying certain special effects are required and no one will ever notice unless you do it wrong.
Yeah.
And the shadow is the perfect example of that, because when you're watching something that's animated from like, you know, head to toe and it doesn't exist in the real world, if you don't cast a shadow properly, people are going to notice it stands out weird, something doesn't right, and it's going to strike that uncanny valley instinct in the back of your head. But if you do it successfully, no one will ever notice that it had a shadow or not. And I never put two and two together that obviously he's in a green screen environment with no real props. The entire background is fake. He's the only real thing in it. They need to animate a shadow for him. Never thought of that.
It's like footstep sound effects in video games.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So now that Doom confirmed that he killed Maroon, Benny ends up finding Eddie and Jessica, but they hightail it back to the real world. I don't know where they're going just yet, but they're heading out of Toon Town, and as they're exiting the tunnel, Judge Doom is waiting on the other side of the tunnel with another barrel of dip. He spills it all over the street, and it causes Benny to spin out and crash into a lamppost. And this is where the judge captures actually, he just leaves Benny. So he just captures everyone else and ties them up.
Which I'm surprised that he leaves Benny alive, considering that like he killed other Toons for less reason, and now here's one who actually is aware of what's going on and helping them.
I think it's like a monologuing thing where it's just
True, it's like I don't have time.
Yeah, and my plan is so close to fruition that even if you did try to stop me, it's too late. There's nothing you can do. So the Weasels at the Acme factory, the Weasels tie up Jessica and Roger, and they search everyone but can't find the will. Oh no, okay. I skipped ahead a little bit too much, but the Roger is still in Toon Town, that's right. He woke up from the back of Jessica's car and took off in Eddie's car, and that's why Benny had to pick them up. So the Weasels search Eddie and Jessica. They can't find the will. Meanwhile, Roger leaves Toon Town, finds Benny screwed up, and I like how Benny drives the car.
Yeah.
Benny drives to the factory, and Roger tells Benny to get the cops while Roger will, go into the factory. Doom is the sole stockholder of pretty much everything at this point, and he has 5,000 gallons of dip to be used to wipe out Toon Town, which we talked about.
I think it's so jarring how, considering how cool and collected Jessica Rabbit is the entire film, when Judge Doom is like, and I have all this 5,000 things of hot dip, and she's just like, dip, and her eyes go wide, and it's
yes.
Oh yeah,
so
it's the first time like
It was a really out of character moment. It's like, yeah, she is a cartoon.
yeah, the first time we like see her go full cartoon.
It's like, wait, she actually is Lena Hyena.
I'm not a Toon, I'm Jessica Krupnik. Didn't you read my novel from 2022?
Oh, I forgot. Wait.
So Doom does the whole monologuing thing and explains that he wants to build a freeway to just get gas stations to open up, and it's just a revenue for money. And then Valiant's like, why the hell did you buy the red car trolley system? And he's like, yeah, I bought it to dismantle it, because in the very beginning how they were like, this is the best public transportation system in the whole country, and it's only like 5 cents to ride the trolley, so it made sense on why he would want to get rid of it. At this point, Roger arrives but is immediately knocked out by a literal ton of bricks. And then here is where
yeah,
Jessica
they caught the
and
hero
Roger are tied
monologuing
up.
in that case.
Yeah.
It's like he comes in. Originally, I was thinking, like, I hadn't seen this in a few years, and I was trying to remember. I was like, oh, is it that, like, he took the gun off like RK Maroon, but the gun is actually a lighter or something? And it's like, as far as we know, it's a real gun. It's just he gets caught monologuing long enough that they drop the bricks on him. Otherwise, it would have been a pretty smooth move by Roger to just show up with a pistol and just take everything over.
Because Eddie had the gun, and then he threw the gun in the passenger seat when he switched to the Toon gun. And then the gun was still in the passenger seat when he arrived in Toon Town and he left the car. And when Roger stole it, the gun was just right there waiting for him. But again, showing, not telling, because they never show that Roger picks up the gun. He just has it. But if you recognize the look of it,
yeah,
you'll know, and you can easily track its current place of events throughout the whole finale of the movie.
Such a good movie.
Doom trips over loose eyeballs that had spilled out from somewhere, causing him to protect one of his eyes, and warns the Weasels to stop laughing. And this gives him the idea, or this gives Valiant the idea to make the Weasels laugh to death, because Doom is distracted for some reason. He just walks away because he's holding his eye, and he goes to attend to that. One by one, each of the Weasels dies of laughter. As the final Weasel dies, the dip machine activates and slowly edges forward, almost hitting Jessica and Roger.
It's wild to think that he, like in any other movie that would be like cartoons and whatnot, he's killing, like actively killing all of these villains, bumping off these henchmen. Granted, it's in a fun, silly way, but they are dying. Their souls are leaving their body, and one of them is actively grabbing his soul and struggling to pull it back to his body so he doesn't die, and then it still bursts from him and goes off.
Eddie's original last name was Shang Tsung.
They should have made it as intense as the scene in Saving Private Ryan on the stairs where he slowly gets stabbed.
Also, the fact that he has angel wings and is going off, that implies that Toons have a heaven. Is there a Toon god? Does he too stay in Toon heaven?
I don't know, but it sounds blasphemous.
Does he also have 5 fingers, whereas everyone else has 4 or less? That was a Simpsons reference. So Doom starts fighting Eddie, and once Doom subdues Eddie, he gets control of a steamroller to crush him. Eddie escapes the steamroller using that the black hole thing. The uses for that one little prop, I feel, are endless. And
oh yeah,
I would love to see a movie where one guy gets a hold of one of those and all like the hijinks that would happen.
I think there was an old, either it was a cartoon or it might have been like a comic or something, of getting one of those portable holes and like throw it on the side of a safe, reach in, pull out all the money.
Eddie escapes the roller, and in the last moments of their fight, Doom gets glued to the roller, and that kills Doom in a fit of horrific screams.
His screaming is so wild. This. All of this, and then as he's slowly like struggling against the glue, as the steamroller slowly going over him, and he's just letting out these high-pitched screams of just like, ah,
it's so good. It's really good.
I like how Discord censored you as you're screaming. Oh God, I hated
that's
all
what
the
it was,
screaming.
a censor?
Yeah, well,
yeah, the noise suppression. I thought you were just not doing the entire scream.
No. It's like Christopher Lloyd is really great at doing those specific kinds of screams. I think he does something similar in Addams Family. I feel like there's one other movie too where he's just like screaming incoherently, and it's not like he has the same kind of outbursts as like Nicolas Cage, but he has enough movies under his belt where he is screaming like this, and it just always kind of stuck with me.
A bit of yell on One Floor with a Cuckoo's Nest when his leg is burnt by the cigarette. That's all.
And here is where we discover that Doom is not dead. Doom is actually a Toon, and here is where we hear the most iconic line in all of cinematic history.
Remember me, Eddie? When I killed your brother, I talked. Yes!
Eddie manages to hit the dip machine and spray Doom, killing him, and that's it. I mean, there was a few back and forths. You know, he has some weird like Toon powers where it's almost like fighting the T-1000, where like his arm suddenly becomes like this buzzsaw thing, and it tries to cut Eddie. And he has like Go-Go Gadget, like bouncy
boots,
shoes that he's able to like leap across the room,
it's like a spring heel jack,
a single bound. Yeah. But with everything that he had under his tool belt, it wasn't enough, and he officially dies pretty quick, especially with the dip machine and more screaming and yelling, almost doing like the parody from Wizard of Oz, you know, I'm melting, and then all that's left over is just like a rubber skin suit that vaguely looks like Christopher Lloyd, just flattened down on the ground. So the dip machine gets into Toon Town, but a train immediately runs it over. All this planning done by Judge Doom is just kind of useless, because I feel the cartoon law-defying physics would have just been like, oh, an immediate threat to our entire existence, and oh no, a piano fell that happens to be the size of a whatever machine that the dip thing was. So as it gets destroyed, Eddie frees Jessica and Roger as the police arrive, and all of the Toons arrive as well. Eddie sees that the ink that he was sprayed with came back, and then he has an epiphany at this point, and he asks Roger to read that love letter out loud, where we realize that the paper wasn't blank after all. It was actually the will.
So if he has Acme's disappearing, reappearing ink, that means when Acme sprayed him with all that ink and then was like, oh, hey, don't worry, buddy. Look, it's gone. Acme knew that later on that was going to ruin his shirt.
Yes.
Good thing he's dead.
I mean, it's clear that the guy's an asshole. Because, I mean, who would spray somebody with ink regardless if it's going to disappear or come back afterward? The fact that he wanted to do that, no, the guy's a dick. So
I mean, to be fair, Acme was also basically keeping all of Toon Town hostage. Like, he owned them, and he could have given them their freedom, but he chose not to until he was dead.
I'm actually surprised one of them didn't kill him earlier.
Right?
yeah, it's the case of that where the slave owner dies and promises like the one slave in the room, like, you guys are all free, and then just know who's gonna believe it. They needed the will and testament to prove it. So it's kind of messed up that he went that far to. Why couldn't you have released this before your death? You wanted to keep them hostage until you were no longer on this earth to deal with them anymore? That's messed up.
He wasn't fully decided yet. He was like, well, maybe I won't, though.
What if Acme was holding back Toon Town for the sake of humanity? Because it's like, once he dies, you realize, oh no, this is all horrific. Just because we get to see Looney Tunes and Disney doesn't mean there's still like thousands and thousands of like horrific, monstrous tunes that are now coming out of that portal.
It's just the elder gods or tunes.
It's like eldritch creatures because their like physics don't affect them. They can just like transform into whatever they want. I mean, realistically, at the end of the day, Bugs Bunny would be terrifying. Somebody that can literally just turn into whatever they want, pop up with any costume, like physics don't apply to them.
With Steamboat Willie going into public domain.
Oh, God.
Same thing with Winnie the Pooh and
Popeye.
Just wait until Bugs becomes public domain, and I'm pretty sure we'll get another B-level horror movie showcasing that exact talent.
B-level's kind.
Yeah. I'm sure it's coming.
But I do like that Eddie shows he still hasn't lost his sense of humor. That he's now finally returned to the old Eddie, evidently, of appreciating tunes and being more open to the silliness of it all.
He is a changed man, and I do appreciate that quite a bit.
And I like how everybody starts to sing Smile Darn Smile from the 1931 Merry Melodies cartoon of the same name.
I think this is where my dislike for vintage cartoons pre-Looney Tunes came from. Because it's almost unsettling to me seeing that.
What, just all of them singing?
Well, no, just the way that, like, how they're singing and just the way that they used to dance back then. It always was unsettling to me. And I think that kind of just stemmed into I want to say like a loathing hatred for, but I never really liked it over the course of the years. And especially as an adult, I'm not really anything of that era. I don't usually gravitate toward. Like, Cuphead was difficult for me to play. Really?
Huh.
Yeah.
On a side note, Bugs Bunny will be public domain in 2036.
Okay, mark your calendars.
I'm writing. Let's write the script already. Let's get it going.
Although a cool one is actually Dick Tracy goes public domain in 2027.
I think the movie was perfect.
Can he stop? Can Warren Beatty stop that?
I don't know.
Do you mean like legally,
he can protect
or like
his version
he gets
of the
a gun?
I guess he probably.
Oh,
he may
Warren
not be
Beatty,
around
you gotta
by
stop
that time.
this.
He may or may not be alive. Not that old, but you know. He's extremely. That's why. Side note: you always see him, or like randomly every couple of years he pops up as Dick Tracy in something. He has to do that to retain the rights.
Really?
He owns Dick Tracy.
Oh, I didn't realize he owns it.
It's probably just really expensive, and it's like buying something really overpriced and just finding every excuse to use it just to justify the purchase.
I don't know if he owns something specific about it.
Maybe movie rights.
Maybe it depends on the medium up here of rights. But yeah, you'll see him appear every so often. He was in a commercial, I think, last time that I saw him appear as Dick Tracy.
Huh.
I still need to watch that movie. Never seen it, and I know I need to, and it's just time.
That could definitely be on this podcast.
I was like, definitely, it sounds like something we'd cover.
Mm-hmm.
That movie's like a fever dream to me.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why I would choose it to be like, I want to watch this. And I definitely saw it as a kid, but I don't remember a goddamn thing about it.
I feel like if we did Dick Tracy, we'll kick off January, because I feel like this movie, Dick Tracy, if I do The Rocketeer, like all of those have a very similar feel to them.
Like
The Shadow
movie too.
The Shadow.
Yeah.
Who knows what evil lurks in the hearts of men? The Shadow knows.
I did love The Shadow.
Why did his face get weird?
Who's?
In The Shadow?
Yeah.
I don't know.
What do you mean his face got weird?
Why does his nose have to change?
Spoilers.
You just look at the trailer. It shows him like with his bandana, and he's like, "That's not your nose, or you look a little different."
Well, he probably looked at Superman and figured he needed more than just a little hair flip in order to, and a pair of sunglasses to change his identity. So
I know nothing about it, so I don't know if he goes through a physical change when he becomes the super powered part of himself. That's all I know, which is nothing. This is a great movie. This is a legendary movie, always easy to watch. Always, as in, I haven't seen this movie in many, many years, but if I watch it, I would happily watch it again because it's a good, enjoyable movie.
I think this
Sure,
is
I
probably one of my top 3 movies of all time.
Damn.
Wow.
Get damn.
I mean, it is great. I love that this was picked because it's something I had forgotten about, like very much on the edges of my mind. And then I was like, oh, we're gonna do Who Framed Roger Rabbit. I was like, oh yeah, that's a good movie.
it's always been a favorite of mine, and it always like comes and goes throughout the year where like I'll think about it. I may not always watch it, and a lot of the times I'll have it like while I'm playing a game or doing something else, and it's just background. And I'll admit, like, this was a refresh because this is the first time I'd sat and watched it as an adult with the intention of watching it from start to finish, since I honestly can't remember the last time I watched it from start to finish while paying full 100% attention to it. So it definitely still holds up. And all of the thoughts that I've had, even between viewings, of how the storytelling and just the way that the special effects are and the acting, and you know, you're invested with the characters by the end of it. And you know, as an adult, seeing Bob Hoskins like kick the habit of alcoholism. I mean, we don't know. For all we know, like after that hell of a day that he had, probably, you know, picked a hell of a day to quit drinking, so he just picks it right back up again. But we like to think that he stopped drinking after this, but it's always been one of the top movies ever for me. And what can I say? Watching this at 1 year old, I mean, you can't go any you can't go anywhere else from here. So I mean, I started with one of the best movies of all time. So good show, God, jolly good show.
Sorry, I think it was the airplane joke. Like, hell of a day to quit drinking, hell of a day to quit smoking, hell of a day to quit doing methamphetamines.
Hell of a day to quit sniffing glue.
So any other closing thoughts?
Perfect film, no notes. Anybody that hasn't seen it, I think it stands the test of time that it's not, oh, well, if you grew up with it, you'd like it. I think anybody who watches it now will still love this movie. And if not, you're dead inside.
Even just for the novelty of how they blended that style of animation with live action film has been attempted. You know, it's certainly been done with CGI, but it's a very different look, and it's extremely iconic. And if you are a fan of cartoons and animation, then it's definitely a must watch.
It's a joy.
It hits different too, because it's hand drawn animation versus, or like 2D animation versus. Because you can still pull this off with like Family Guy, South Park level animation, because it's still computer made, but it's 2D. But having the love and care of how they did it with 2D hand drawn animation, it hits completely different than seeing like, Sonics, than seeing, two screaming goats in a Thor movie. Like, yeah, they're real things that they're able to put on film and make it look like as real as possible, but just the sense of realism I feel when I look at Sonic the Hedgehog versus this, I feel Bugs Bunny is on that screen in reality a lot more than ever seeing Nicolas Cage's Superman in the Flash movie,
Yeah.
Well, we can't thank you enough for coming along for this revisit of Who Framed Roger Rabbit. If you like what you've heard, please drop a review and rating, or both, and subscribe to us on Spotify, YouTube, or wherever else you get your podcast to help us out. Likes and subscribing really helps the channel out, so please head over to Instagram where you can find us at Screen Refresh, or smash that like and subscribe button on YouTube at the profile at the Screen Refresh Network. You can shoot us an email at screenrefresh@gmail.com, or join us on our Discord. I was going to say because it's written as Tim, David, and Dean. I was going to say for Tim, Dean, and David. I'm like, it doesn't matter, Nick. So for the rest of them, this is Nick. You can take care of yourself, and you can catch us next on Rule of Thirds, airing every third Monday of the month, and also our sister podcast, Don't Open This Podcast, every second and fourth Monday of the month.
Damn, I had a great ending line, and I completely forgot it.
What was it? It's not too late.
No, I mean, I completely forgot it. It's gone.
It's gone.
Was it one of your Bob Hoskins impressions?
The whole thing.
I don't think so.
Oh, you could
I
do
think
the
it was
whole
along the
outro
lines-
like that.
We can't thank you enough for coming. That's not Bob Hoskins. Sound like an orc.
Yeah, I was gonna say
Urukai.
meat's back on the menu, boys.
I picked up our trail.
That's all, folks.